Can I have are there any changes or motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 2.01, proposed 2025-2026 program of studies.
Good evening, everyone.
Nice.
We're revisiting the topic that was on our work session last month about the program of studies. And included are the same slides that you had from the last time, which includes the summary slide of the changes, which includes the addition of the Center for Business and Information Technology at Colonial Forge High School. The center itself will include 5 pathways, and that includes 2 that are in the business administration side, which is business administration and entrepreneurship, as well as 3 on the IT side, which is Cyber 4+, business information technology, and data analytics. In addition to the center, we are fully implementing the new mathematics sequence that does significantly increase the number of students taking Algebra 1 in the middle school years. It also, we've done a number of clarifications to assist our school counselors in appropriately identifying prerequisites, as well as changing language to make sure that course selections run smoothly and course changes are limited. The application system will open with the opening of the high school discovery nights, which are housed at each location, each of the Stafford County high schools, and students can explore the offerings at those schools, as well as the centers and programs that are also available for them to apply to. That application system opens on December 3rd. It closes on the 24th of January. And then we have about 3 weeks programmed in, roughly, to complete all of the CGS applications and interviews. And then we will notify parents on February 17th.
For all the things?
Yes,
So
yeah.
CGS has interviews, but the others don't, but everybody gets notified on the 17th?
That is correct.
Okay.
So that will be the first day that we'll send out a mass, hey, this is what you've been offered, and then students and their parents can have discussions. They will have 7 days to accept an offer. They can also decline. If they choose to accept an offer, if they were offered something that is lower than their top priority, they will remain on the wait list for those programs. And so while they're accepting, they may get another offer, which would enable them to get one of their more preferred offers, but at least they'll have something that they've selected. So that is the plan so far. We have narrowed the number of days for responses from 16 to 7 in order to make sure that things move quickly, quickly enough to make sure that there's adequate time for each student to get offers that they are interested in. And then finally, we wanted to highlight the language, because I know that transportation is an ongoing topic of discussion. Wanted to make you aware of the language regarding transportation that is included. So there are a few times that these are mentioned, and this is the current wording. And so should any changes be made by your all's decisions, then we could update the language as necessary, but we wanted to show you what exists in there currently. So with that, I think the floor is your all's to have discussion and to entertain questions and answers.
Who would like to start?
I had a couple questions, if it's okay,
Sure.
just based on one current. So I need to go back and figure out the whole middle school math thing. I got a call from my mom that her son was in math 7, now he's in math 8. It's not algebra per se, or pre-algebra, so they feel like it's kind of impacting his ability to move forward into 9th grade. I don't know, I'm reading it, that's why I pulled up my phone. If you look at what the, he's in math 8 now, but if you look at what the program of study requirements are for 9th grade pass, then he does not meet the requirements for some of them. Am I getting that wrong? And I said I don't know, but I'll ask.
It's hard to just take from the email and ascertain right now exactly what that situation. If they wanna reach out to me, I
Okay.
can certainly shepherd an answer directly to them and through the principal.
Okay, but then, so then can you answer, so then tell me how
What are the
that
options?
works now, right, so
Sure.
how does that work now?
So,
Do our counselors offer algebra, or is it automatic? Like, those are the things that I think I'm confused about.
so the progression would say that once students, let's not talk about course titles.
Okay.
But we'll talk about standards of learning. So the state requires that we teach standards of learning. We can teach them in any groupings we want, and we can manipulate them. Once students finish the grade 8 math standards successfully, they should move on to Algebra 1. Okay, so having said that, the offerings that we have currently, and this will be fully implemented as of next year, would, in grade 6, students would learn the content of all of grade 6 and part of grade 7.
Okay.
And then in the second year, in their 7th grade year, they would learn the rest of the 7th grade standards and all of the 8th grade standards, and then they're ready to take Algebra 1 in grade 8. If they are not quite successful with the grade 8 standards, and we have criteria that we're actually working with schools and math specialists and coaches as well as principals right now on, if they don't, if they meet a criteria that says that they need more support before they take a full Algebra 1 course, then we have developed a course, and it's in the program of studies called Foundations of Algebra 1, which will enable them to, they'll revisit a number of the 8th grade standards, but then they'll also start getting a head start and a running start into some of the Algebra 1 standards.
Okay.
The other option would be, say that it's a child that's right on the line where the parents are like, they're struggling, but struggle's not always a bad thing, right? Like, we get stronger when we struggle a little bit. But maybe they're on that place where they aren't really sure what to do. They could take Algebra 1, and then we have a Tier 3 course that could be assigned to them
Okay.
to support them through Algebra 1 to make sure that they're successful. I hope that answers your question. The other option is a 3-year intensive program for grade 6 grade students. It's called Pre-Algebra Intensive, and it's the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards in 1 year, and then they take Algebra 1 in 7th, and then we have, algebra,
I'm sweating.
geometry in 8th grade.
I'm sweating. No, that's not cool. All right, so then just to clarify, so really moving forward, we've set up this pathway all the way into our specialty programs, but I mean, this is an 8th grader, so we just need to figure out that particular situation, right, to make sure. Or in 9th grade, will he have the opportunity to take, if he doesn't get it now, will he have the opportunity to take the algebra
Absolutely.
Can
stuff?
he take it over the summer?
That's my
Certainly,
next question. Or does it need
not
to
really
be-
a recommended option.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we really
My
want
kids
that to
have
be
done it.
face-to-face with a full course, but.
Is that an Edgenuity? Is that what you're saying? Not
No,
face-to-face?
actually, we're gonna be offering it face-to-face,
Oh,
but,
Oh, that's even better.
yeah, we're gonna try, but remember, it's a compacted timeline.
Sure.
It's a lot each day, so processing
it's
time
harder,
is
right.
reduced, and for some students, that can be a challenge. So we will always have transfer students that come here that will need Algebra 1 in grade 9.
Okay.
But we will significantly reduce the number of sections of Algebra 1 in grade 9.
Okay.
And so I'm estimating that we'll probably have at least 75% of our students taking Algebra 1 in grade 8, by
Okay.
grade 8.
Can I, so for old timers not, I just
Sure.
want to clarify something on the math. For those of us who are, on our 3rd middle school or in a short period of time, this sounds very much like the progression that used to be called 6x, 7x Algebra 1. Is that similar? Because are you familiar with it?
I'm not
Does-
exactly,
okay.
Yes.
Like it's not like I don't,
yeah, I
to
mean,
someone who's been here, it
if
doesn't
it's 2
sound
courses,
like-
then
it
Algebra
sounds-
1, yes.
It sounds
Most
like,
likely.
like renaming of or maybe restructuring or adding structure to something we used to do or maybe always did, but now it's called something else,
This
and we're
isn't new
trying
this
to
year,
do more.
we put this in.
We started
last year.
this,
Yeah.
last
But-
year
Okay, 'cause I feel like even my 11th
with
grader.
rising, with sixth graders last year were the first group.
Oh,
And so those
pre-COVID, I
kids,
feel like
those students
this
are
was
currently in
double math.
seventh grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was back
We
when I
had double
double math.
math then, so we probably could have done it.
And they are double blocked in mathematics,
Yes.
right, and in language arts.
Sure are.
And then the only other question I had regarding this was, will we offer the ability to transfer to the offering school? But if they take travel, that means that the parent has to take them, right? Is that the deal? Is that what that says? Because I've read it 4 different ways and I don't know why it doesn't sound right to me.
So before we start in on this conversation, let's define what we're talking about. So we have midday travel
Okay.
students that will travel either in the morning or in the afternoon, but they belong to one school
Right,
and they travel to another for a program and then they come back. Transfer students
okay,
are students that actually don't attend their zoned high school.
okay,
And those are students that are in a 4-year program,
okay,
including things like CGS, IB, and the centers.
gotcha. Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Ms. Randall?
Yes, thank you. So back to the math, as far as like SOL and credit requirement, are both of the algebras that you're talking about in the middle school going to earn them the Algebra 1 credit?
Only the full Algebra 1 course would
So
give
not
them
the foundations
high school, it would be the Carnegie unit, the high school credit would
Okay.
only be Algebra 1.
Okay, so just taking Algebra 1 in middle school does not necessarily give you the credit unless you're taking the,
That is correct. And just as a general reminder, any student that takes a high school credit-bearing course during the middle school years
Right.
may expunge that credit prior to 9th grade.
Right.
And we have a process for doing that by state law.
okay. And then, isn't the foundations course you're talking, is that basically a pre-algebra? We're just not calling it that?
We have.
Correct.
pre-algebra.
Yeah, I mean,
But that's not
it's-
what we're offering, and not anymore.
I mean,
That's
my,
what-
my kid's taking pre-algebra now.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is that I don't see it listed if we're doing just foundations and then algebra, where's pre-algebra?
So the pre-algebra 7 is the course that finishes the 8th grade standards.
Right,
Then this course would revisit a number of the 8th grade standards, but also start working on the Algebra
Algebra
1
standards.
content, but they would
Yeah.
not teach the entirety of that course.
okay,
It's really just giving a really good running start into their high school years in taking Algebra 1.
okay.
So, we have occasionally the situation at a middle school where there's nobody who can, there's no licensed teacher for algebra. And so the kids take the class, but they maybe don't actually have the opportunity to learn the material. So, but they might pass the class, cause we wanna make sure that everybody passes, so the kids pass the class. So, I mean, is there any kind of roadblock to doing specialty centers? Does it really matter if you've had algebra? I'm just not clear.
I'm a little unsure as to what your question is.
Yeah, so
No.
I'm like, so if my kid goes to a school that the math teacher leaves in January, and for the rest of the year, my kid just has a whole bunch of subs, and doesn't really learn algebra, but they pass the class,
Mhm.
then they've met the requirement,
Mhm.
right? And so there'll be no problem. How is that different from a kid who just doesn't actually take the class? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
Right now, we only have 2 pathways in those, in our 4-year offerings that require Algebra 1 by the end of grade 8.
Okay.
And so there is a choice that can be made in there. So could a student even retake Algebra 1? Yes, that is a possibility, but it may not be a possibility for instance, with the IB, they may have to dual enroll or co-enroll at another year to catch up to where they need to be in order to access the higher level mathematics.
Okay. So what are the 4 programs? I'm gonna guess
The-
CGS, IB,
So, no, currently, yeah, it's CGS, IB, and the engineering at the Epic Center.
Okay,
Mhm.
I just was curious, because you said there were 4, so I just wondered what the 4 were, so.
I believe it's,
Probably one of these, I
think stat
or
engineering,
cyber or
yeah.
something like that.
Okay. And then, with this 11th and 12th grade students accepted into a program pathway, if a student opts to switch their school, does that have any effect on participation in sports?
they would participate at the school in which they're
So
transferred
VHSL
to.
wouldn't have a problem with their switching midway
So-
through?
To clarify, probably Jim might be the best person, or
Right.
Dr. Stemple, to answer this, but once they start at that school, so if they've started at that base school,
Yeah.
you can't switch mid-year, like you can't play football and then go play baseball at a different school. But is it 10 days? When do you lose your VHSL transfer ability?
Third day of school.
The third day of school.
Okay, so you can switch, because there used to be something
Yeah.
like you had to be at the school for, if you switched schools, you had to be at that school for a year before you could participate in sports. That's no longer the case?
If, for a new specialty program, the superintendent can grant a one-time waiver.
Okay, but these aren't specialty
So,
programs, these
Let
are.
me
Current
clarify.
education, yeah.
Let me, I'm gonna need you to chime in just a sec. So let's clarify, let's talk about two different groups of kids. Number one, a ninth grade student that is selecting any four-year program that
Right,
requires
and I
transfer.
understood that, right, they're fine.
On the third day of school, they establish VHSL eligibility at the school at which the program is offered in.
Right.
Meaning the school to which they are transferring.
Right.
For the 11th grade students that have already previously been in a school, and they were to say, oh, we wanted to go to auto body or auto tech, they could choose to play sports at that school and travel, midday travel back and forth still, and still remain at their school. Or they could transfer, and I believe that we would have the ability to waive the VHSL.
Superintendent has that ability.
Yes, one time though, so it can't happen multiple times, that's.
So if they drop out of that program and say, you know what, auto body, I need that off ramp, and they go back to their original school, they cannot transfer back.
They can transfer back.
They can't
Would not be
they
They
can't
would not
go
be
back.
eligible.
Yeah.
After a year.
Until the
they
following
can
year.
be.
I just wanted to be clear,
Yep.
because I
Yes.
don't want language and people not to realize that
I think
something
it's very
like that
important.
could happen, so I
Yeah.
just
It's very
wanted.
important.
Yeah, it's
You
great to
are-
clarify.
I guess, so for these programs and not knowing what it takes to actually enroll, do we fill out a course request form and then all of a sudden my kid at Forge can take a program at Stafford High School? Or does somebody actually sit down with them and say, do you understand that this means you will miss, block 2, you're gonna have to leave early and you might not be back on time and this is gonna impact your extracurriculars? Like, do we have those conversations with these
Yeah, our
students?
school counselors do a great job
Okay.
of working with students to make sure that they understand the opportunity cost.
Okay.
But how many times, we're only allowing them, like, I mean, I know like ninth, tenth, but now as we're setting this up for them to stay within the specialty center, that ninth grade year, right, is that actual really pathway year, do I wanna stay here or whatever, so like, how many times would we talk, like, I can't transfer as a student or, change my mind all 4 years and be like, oh, I wanna go here, I wanna go there, like, so we're just talking about like a one-off, like, hey, I'm gonna change my program, that kind of thing.
Right, but they're the
Yeah.
kids who do the 2-year programs rather than the 4-year programs.
Right,
That's
right.
what I was asking.
And
Yeah.
And so these aren't ones necessarily changing programs, it's choosing a program that's only a 2-year program.
Okay.
So they wouldn't start it as a ninth grader, they're starting it as an 11th.
11th
grader.
grader,
And will
okay,
there be
that makes
2-year
sense.
programs at all 6 high schools or all 5 of the current high schools?
Yes.
Okay. So
There'll be
what
some
are
of
the
it.
2-year programs at Forge?
You have a listing in front of you, it was one of the attachments that was included in the bulletin last week.
Yeah. I think Forge has like EMT and fire, I know at least.
Yeah, why did EMT go down from 4 to 1? Is it a certification, is it not a full, is that what's
So,
happening?
It's always been a one-year program, but what we did was we were trying to build out 4-year pathways. And so we were trying to give courses that were logically connected, that would get a cohort of students that was interested and focused on it for 4 years versus the one which is required.
Okay.
for the program.
But isn't there, so I understand there's an EMT one and an EMT two, those are not two different things, or?
They are two different classes, but our students are able to meet the requirements of that program within 1 year. So EMT
Co-enroll.
one happens in semester one, and EMT two happens in
Okay.
semester two.
Stephanie Carter, our director of CTE.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody.
Phone a friend.
And so is that the similar process, that's a similar thing that happens, right, in culinary arts, moving them to a 2-year program, they're specifically like semester based, like you're taking, right?
Culinary arts, I think, is, it can also be consolidated. I wouldn't really call it even co-enrolled, it's more like consolidating into one semester.
Okay.
But a lot of CTE programs can function that way if they're double blocked during the school day.
So are we double blocking this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And nurse aid is another example, so our students can get through that nurse aid program in 1 year.
Can I ask the dumb question? What's the benefit of that is there a benefit of that versus the current structure, or is it allowing more time for other classes? Like, what is the benefit? I
It's
don't
for a
know.
12th grade, rising 12th grade student that once, has made a choice and we want to
Perfect.
get them on track for a career.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right, that's a great answer.
Does anyone else have a question?
Can you refresh us on how students are selected for their programs if they put in 4 applications? And, I mean, I know, they'll, if they get accepted for one, then they're on a list, but,
Mhm.
is that a rolling list? They stay in the same spot, or how does that process
So,
work?
the selection system, and so we need to qualify because we have an application system that has 2 different selection systems within it. One is CGS, which is a merit-based, that's a separate, right, take that out.
And IB, everybody gets into, right? That
Well,
applies?
actually,
Depends on the number of applicants.
Okay.
This past
Have we
year,
ever turned anyone down for IB?
we have not.
no, so this past year was the first time that they were included in that lottery, it just, the number of slots still exceeded the number of applicants.
So,
For the other programs?
so it is a full lottery system, so all students have an equal opportunity to be selected. What happens is the original group, we tell it how many to select from each grade level, and so then it'll select those students. It takes the remainder of the students and puts them on a wait list that is not publicly available, because we want it to go through the system notification process versus people saying, am I 3 or 4 or 17 or 122? And does it change the next day? So then it will offer it. If someone declines, that it gets an offer, it'll move to the next one and automatically send them an offer to attend. And then if they decline, it'll send it to the next person and so on until all the seats are filled or the wait list is exhausted.
And how do we confirm that they received it when it's automatically sent? And the reason I'm asking that is, sometimes things go into spam or junk, or, I don't want someone
So
to miss that.
that's a part of our
notice.
education process for parents, and so we do, they have the ability to notify by text or email. So they have an option to do either one or both. And so a text would not go to spam. And so that is just something that we talk to people about, and we tell them, we'll send out a notification that says, notifications are going out from this email address on this day, and please be looking for those.
And we do that in various languages.
Yeah, we sure do.
I just wanna make sure nothing slips
Mhm.
through,
Yeah, I understand.
and the student.
We had great success this past year with our application system and the notifications. It was very smoothly run, and it worked out really well.
Do you know how many you didn't receive any response to, for notifications? I'm just curious.
I would have to get with the
I
person
get
who's
you.
my
I get
primary
you.
on that and really dig into the numbers, but we can
Well,
provide some additional.
just because if it's really low, then I'd say, well, then that doesn't appear to be.
We send out a reminder email with, I believe it's 2 or 3 days in advance of their deadline.
No, I'm just concerned about ones that potentially could slip through and not know that it came out. So if you didn't get the first one, you're probably not gonna get the reminder,
And this past year, I don't think we heard from really anybody that said, hey, I never got an email,
Right,
what's going on?
Nobody was
Nobody reached out.
unhappy
saying-
based on that.
Yeah.
Nobody told you that.
right?
Well, if they were waiting and didn't get an email, they probably would reach out and say, hey, I applied to the Cyber
Or
Plus,
it
how
gets
come I never got
around.
an email?
Yeah.
And-
But we do push it out a lot, and various, it could be the school principal pushing out, hey, be on the lookout for this, it's not just from the
Counselors do
lottery
it.
email.
Well, then presumably there was nobody that didn't reply, because you have to positively accept, right?
Mhm.
No, it will auto decline if you
If
don't
you
do it
reached the
within
deadline and had not
the deadline.
accepted, it would decline.
Well, then that's what I'd like to know, how many audit declines were, not
Yeah.
immediately, but I'm
Okay.
sure that some computer can spit out that answer.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do
How
that.
many audit declines there were, out of how many notifications went out and how many audit declines were there?
That's a good point, and we
And
can
the folks
emphasize
know
it even
that
more
if
this
they
year.
don't answer by a
Please.
certain time?
A very
folks-
small
I'm sorry.
number.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, is that something we also tell them if you don't answer within a certain number of days, it auto decline, like you
In
will
the
be automatically
notification,
I have 7.
in the offer, it says, this offer expires on so-and-so. And then, in the actual application system, when they log in, they can also see it there. So you can choose it, in there, but you can see it in both places, but,
Do you
just
discuss
please-
it during the information?
oh, yeah, yep, the process we include. And just please note that some people allow things to auto decline because they know that they are not gonna choose it. Sometimes, like, they just say, I won't even log in because I know it'll auto decline in 7 days.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't receive it, so I just caution.
Can I ask a quick question of clarification? You talked about, it just hit me, expunging a middle school grade before high school.
Sure.
Obviously for algebra, we know that that means they have to retake it because you need an algebra credit to graduate in Virginia, correct? Is that specific for algebra? Like if you take a foreign language in middle
It
school,
applies to that too.
do you have to retake that same foreign language? Like if you take French in middle, or I guess not French, let's say Spanish in middle school, and it is not your language, and you want to expunge that grade and start over with French in high school, do you have to retake Spanish, or can you
If
take,
you-
Take whatever you want.
you just have to do the foreign language?
It's just get
You
the
can pick a
numbers.
different a different requirement,
But
or
if
different
Or sign
it is
course that
expunged,
meets your foreign language
Sorry?
requirement.
it is expunged, so it
Oh, it will be
doesn't
expunged,
exist
but
for
like-
graduation requirements.
Right, so you could take another language, you don't have to
Yep.
take the same language.
Correct.
Algebra is just one of those things, I know it has to be algebra. Jenny?
Although it's expunged, is it still on your records?
No.
Like,
It's
it
not.
wouldn't be shown on any type of records at all?
It's usually people that want a higher GPA that may not have gotten the grade they wanted
Go back and.
in middle school, so they wanna take it over again
Is this
and get a
something
higher
that's
grade
secure
to help their
or is it-
GPA.
It's been that way for a long time.
Michael, can you just talk about our structure of our informational nights and how we're doing it this year, just kind of more for the public's
Can I
awareness?
ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So we have currently 521 students are full-time enrolled in our pathways, in our 3 schools, correct? And we have 329 midday travel students currently. What will those projections be for next year? Do we have any idea? What,
So if we go,
so we add the next cohort, so would that number double? What else?
So we'll have some drop off that are 12th graders this year, or somebody that maybe exits from a pathway, and then we're adding a second
they-
year for
But
some of
they're,
our.
no, our pathway started with 9th graders.
Yeah, that's
She's
what
counting just.
No, I know, they could be on a stat program now that's a midday travel, or an IB that
So some of the
at
travel
the point that
students
was a
may log
full-time,
off.
and some of our
Next year's
transfer
students.
students, because we
Next
still have
year's-
transfer students like for IB at Brookpoint that are,
Next
Gonna
year's seniors
take-
were the last
Yeah.
class that were allowed to travel midday.
that is
Yeah.
correct.
But we still are gonna be offering all these midday
But
course
we have
offerings.
these 2-year programs that,
The
which, I
2-year,
mean,
right.
some of them make sense for 2 years.
If you see 4-year on here, and then you see a blank in the far right, that means that 4-year pathway will, so it will essentially double for
Okay.
those. For the ones that show 4-year, and then it says on the far right, becoming a 2-year program, we won't be starting new freshmen
Okay.
in that path, in that
But we
4-year pathway.
have freshmen in those pathways now.
But we do have some freshmen, and those numbers are reflected, they're very small numbers, as you see, and that's a
Okay.
part of the reason why
Okay,
we're
that's what
moving it
they're-
to a 2-year
okay.
program. And so I can come up with the number, and estimate it
Yeah,
for
I'm just
next
trying to,
year.
I'm just trying to see,
But-
what the impact's going to be
Sure.
on transportation
Sure.
for,
It will roughly be double.
roughly.
I mean, to speak frankly,
For the
and,
full day.
well,
Yes.
it will,
For the full-time transfer students, it'll roughly double.
yeah, roughly double. But we can, for instance, control that number. So for instance, with Colonial Forge, in opening up the center, one of the things we did to help keep their numbers so that they didn't lose too many students this past year,
Right.
is we upped the number of Cyber 4+ students that they
72.
accepted up, and so that offset. So what we can do is we can lower the number of, in those 5 pathways that I had outlined here, right here, we can lower the numbers so that it's roughly equal to the number of students that were scheduled to be in Cyber 4+ this current year, so that we're not drastically increasing the numbers based on that center alone.
And so, the midday travel students that you have from Autobody on down, other than the ones that you say will be phased out, those will be ongoing midday travel programs that we will continually offer.
Unless they're currently a senior, and they will phase out, of course, and then you'll have a group of 11th graders that would replace them.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a little disappointed that, there isn't going to be this, cohort specialty opportunity for these kids, right? The way it was originally presented to us was, you know, like, HVAC would be something, and you'd be with a group of kids for 4 years. But now what we're talking about is really that you'll be with your regular school, and then you would travel midday, or you would transfer in 11th and 12th grade.
Well, for the Epic Center specifically, you will still have that 4-year cohort, but we will also offer it as an 11th and 12th grade group for the students who weren't ready to commit to a 4-year program in Rising in 9th grade. But that travel program, maybe specifically in HVAC, would exist there.
And I saw something about, so drafting is no longer going to be there was something about drafting.
I saw that, I
So
think
the-
it was in this.
So originally, drafting was included in the center so that the students would come in 9th grade, they take introduction to construction trades, then they choose a trade or drafting. What that limited was the ability of the student that was interested in drafting to get to level 4, which they need to be at to complete their work on the Boots House. And so, at the request of Mr. Jett and others, we moved it out and just made it its own 4-year pathway so that students can have 4 years just in straight drafting.
So is it still a travel program, so you would travel?
That would be a transfer program.
Okay, yeah, I'm messing up.
So they would have to go to Stafford High School for 4
and
years,
just
yes,
to do the drafting.
yeah, and no other school.
And is that also, in that 4-year pathway, are the courses in drafting a double block class as well, or is it just all single?
They are not, they are single classes.
First year single.
Oh, yeah.
And second, the second years moved to double block, which is part of the reason we made the decision to take them out of the Epic Center, because they really didn't align with the scheduling or the pathways.
Okay.
So I just have a final question on this potential transportation options
Okay.
chart that you
Yeah,
have
sure.
here. So two, if you could explain this, and two, over here under cons, you have minimal loss of instruction time, and I just wanna know why that's a con and not pro. Did you see it? It says minimal loss of instructional
Well, there's
time.
still, I think it's,
And that's a
there
con.
still is loss of instructional time. We
Oh,
have,
I see what you're
we've
saying.
made
I was like, we're really
adjustments,
mad that
we've made adjustments to try to minimize it, but there
Okay.
still
there's
is.
still,
It's a-
okay,
it's
it's
still
still
here.
minimal loss.
And-
It's a con
Gotcha.
there.
I was like, why?
And
Okay,
in
so-
that option, we've made some further changes that will further minimize the amount of instructional time lost as compared to the current year.
It just looks
So-
like you're upset that there's gonna be a minimal loss of instructional
Yeah.
time, and I'm like, what is happening
We-
on
we
that?
talked
So I
about
read it
where
very
to place
literally.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but now that you're saying it that way, so just kind of explain this chart to me,
Yeah,
and to us
so
and what we're looking at.
Yeah, I asked Michael to pull this together, so we worked on this together, and this was knowing that program of studies and transportation and travel transportation are indirectly connected, right? And so I still wanted, based on all the discussions we've had this year, I at least wanted to bring this forward and say, hey, we know this was a concern at the beginning of the year, we made adjustments. We made adjustments in the morning, very quickly, a couple weeks into the school year, and then we made afternoon adjustments, I know, a month ago-ish. And so option one is we don't provide any transportation at all, you have to get your student to your travel school, transfer school, if that's the route. Option two would be a utilization of hub stops, but you have to get your child to that hub stop. So there is no option on here that provides what we started this school year, which was we pick you up from your front door or neighborhood bus stop and take you directly to your transfer school, or even a hub stop, and then to that transfer travel school. So the difference between what we're doing now and option two is, or what we were doing last year in option two, is they still have to get their student to that hub stop, and we would pick them up from the hub stop. So that minimizes the impact on transportation than what we started the school year with, but there still is an impact on transportation. Option three is exactly what we're doing right now, which is, we pick them up from home, we take them to their attendance zone school, and then they take on a shuttle bus from there to the travel transfer school, and then in the afternoon, we do the opposite. And this is an approach, we're all aware, we talked about this, I've shared this with you, this is an approach we did for years. And parents were ultimately okay with it. The difference really was, is we were pulling kids out 25 and 30 minutes early from the day to get them back to the base school. And the adjustment we made this year was that shuttle bus is gonna leave at 1:50 instead of like different school times, but it would have been like a 1:35 time. So we pushed that back. And what we're proposing for next year is we actually change, when I say bell schedule, don't think, bell tiers, this is the bell schedule at the high schools.
Right.
Where first block right now has an extra 5 minutes in it because it's accustomed to having announcements, and we do the pledge, and moment of silence. So we would still do the pledge and moment of silence, but we wouldn't do any announcements, and then we push it to the fourth block. And so Dr. Rice, talked to all the principals and said, yeah, that makes sense, that's fine. So we built in an extra 5 minutes into the fourth block, which reduces even that instructional time that they're losing at the end of the school year right now.
Okay.
The end of the school day.
And we'll set an expectation that there was no new instruction being delivered during that last 10 to 15 minutes of class.
Right, okay.
How many buses does it take to do that option three for just a high school?
Um,
About how many?
Currently.
Currently.
Yeah, so each school technically would have 4 buses leaving their school, going to that travel back to their base school.
Okay, 20.
So let's take North Stafford, for instance, there's gonna be 4 buses later, pulling out of there at 1:50, one goes to Ford, one goes to Point, one goes to Mountain View, and one goes to Stafford High. But those buses then go get in line and they pick up their normal kids leaving those 4 schools. So it doesn't impact that afternoon dismissal, those buses are still available for that afternoon dismissal. And then so each school has 4, so we have 5 schools, so 4, so there's 20 buses that are running these shuttles. Now, it could be as we continue to grow, there might be a school that has a high enrollment that we might need 2 buses leaving North Stafford to go to Mountain View with kids, if we get to that high of a number. So it
We
could go
typically
from
have a
4
number of
to 5
11th
or
and
6.
12th grade, 11th and 12th graders that transport themselves as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many buses are we using for the midday travel? And then do we also allow students to drive themselves at a midday travel?
I don't have the exact number of buses, cause it's gonna depend on where those midday programs are, and if there's any students at that school taking that midday, but I don't think we allow them to leave the school and drive themselves to the other school, only in the morning
I think so,
and
yeah.
afternoons if it's a full day program.
Cause like right now, we have 1 midday program at Colonial Forge, but we have 7 at North Stafford. 7 at Stafford, 4 at Mountain View, 3 at Brook Point, and that's just rough, if I miscounted, I'm sorry. But I'm just curious as to, how do we have like 4 buses driving midday travels to the one program at Forge, which is,
So it's gonna depend on where those students are coming from. If there could be, but it also could be a Mountain View, a bus that's leaving Brook Point going to Mountain View. If it's got one kid going to Forge, they would just drop that kid off at Forge and then go to Mountain View with the rest of the students.
okay.
But that's only if there's a
I don't know
Forge
how
kid
to
at
do
Mountain
that.
View that's going to that midday program at Forge, or the
Okay.
student at Stafford High, maybe there's no students going to the midday program at
So
Forge.
game time decision based on enrollment is what it sounds like.
Yeah. What about ATI? How does that fit in?
Yeah, so ATI has a little bit of a different bell schedule than us, so those students right now in the morning, same thing, they ride the bus to a Stafford High, and then we take them on a shuttle bus to ATI, and then the exact same thing in the afternoon, and they're not missing any class time at ATI because of the way their bell schedule works.
So is that another set of 4 buses?
How can they not miss time if they're on,
They're not on our schedule.
Are they on
So
a earlier
ATI
schedule?
is,
They have a flex block in the morning that allows.
in the afternoon, they have a like 30-minute flex block, so when that flex block starts, they leave there and go back to
Right here.
their school, so then they can ride their normal bus home and don't miss that 10 minutes of instruction time the rest of our students do. And in the morning, they're, I don't know if it's 7:45 or 8 o'clock, but our day starts at 7:30, so those students have time to get to ATI without being delayed.
They had to adjust their schedule though, because some of the kids that are coming from other
It's-
districts.
yeah.
King George and Spotsy and Caroline, they have a much longer.
Fuck here.
And when,
That's, so that's what I understood, we had the flex or whatever, then the flex, and we had that time in the morning built in, whereas the other kids had it in the afternoon, and that was for travel time and distance, right? That's how that bell
I
schedule
think
worked,
ATI
correct?
has it both ends.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, but like Stafford kids
Yeah.
had that time in the morning, like because of the way it fell, while the other kids were getting there, and then in the afternoon, right, so there was no instructional time.
This will come back at our regular meeting, so we can kind of ruminate on what we've heard, and of course, if we have more questions, I think it's something we can talk about it again. But I think we should probably look at tenure.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I have concerns about overpromising, which is what we typically do with transportation. And I am really concerned about having language like this. It kind of ties us to doing this thing, and I just don't know that, I mean, we haven't even gotten this report
That's
from
what I was gonna
what
say.
happened
Yep.
with
Yeah.
transportation, so
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to overpromise with a statement like that when we don't really know what's possible. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, I'm concerned too that we are overpromising without knowing exactly what the impact has been on transportation and where the problems lie. And next year, we will be compounding it because we'll be effectively doubling the number of students.
But I also understand that we're supposed to be looking at like realigning the walk zones and all those other things that will make transportation more efficient. Is that not on the table still? I mean, I thought that was a discussion we were all having after the report came out, that we were gonna be looking at transportation assets for this very purpose, or is this just specifically to the program pathways and travel and transfer students? Which, to Dr. Chase's point, we haven't even seen the report yet, so we wanna be comfortable, I think, making the decision that this is the statement we wanna make, and that we don't have to go with an option, some hybrid form of parents having to drive their kids to do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's definitely more information for me that does need to be, just on that end, because we're supposed to be looking at rolling back these walk zones and seeing different avenues that we can take to alleviate the pressure on that system. Until we can get that system to catch up to the capacity that we actually have.
The other thing I'm worried about is we have a lot of parents that have complained about how early their kids have to get up. Are those kids still gonna stay in the programs that they've signed to, or are they gonna decide that they don't wanna do it
Well,
anymore?
that has changed, right?
Yeah, that's been
That-
eliminated,
since
so
that
they're
house.
riding their regular bus to school now in the
So
morning,
now
so.
there's no, okay.
Well, that's
Although-
gonna be my question, is like, if we are going to increase the number of these students by the number we expect to,
Double it.
how does that impact what we
It'll
do
be
already?
maybe
Because they're
more than
already
that.
getting on their buses, we're already gonna be picking them up at home to get them to their base school regardless of what program they're in, right? So
Yeah.
that's the normal part. So
It's-
then,
it's
how
the-
do we,
It's the additional buses, which are actually more like 25, because
Which
we
will
have
probably be
ATI.
more because you're gonna be doubling that 500
Right.
to 1,000.
Yeah, the buses may be
Yeah,
fuller,
the
but
buses,
I have no
right.
idea.
I don't know.
That's
how
the
many
part
students
that,
are-
like, the
yeah.
math seems like it would almost be more efficient to have more students, because,
Well, if the bus can hold, if we aren't filling the bus at 50 students, but if we are, then we need more buses. So that's,
So that
you know,
25 could be 35.
yeah.
so I just, like, it just mathematically, and I'm not a bus person or a math person, so laugh at me if you want, but we are adding more students to already mostly empty buses. So in the grand
Which is
scheme of,
efficient, that's
right.
fine,
So in the
yes.
grand scheme of things, it really shouldn't have much of an impact on our existing transportation, because we're just putting more buses on more children on buses that are already running.
Yes.
Are any of our buses right now at or near capacity?
I would think ATI, if you've got 60 kids going
Well, I
from
think
Stafford
ATI
to
is
Because they're
totally
coming from
different.
5 schools.
And
Are they?
they're
I
not,
don't
Yeah,
know. I
they're
just-
on like,
So different buses.
yeah,
Yeah.
so like that
And
would
it's
be.
if they all ride, cause some of them are still.
That's what makes me feel a little better about at least being able to say, we can do what we're doing now
year.
again. But I don't know that we're gonna be making any improvements over what we're doing now, like.
Please know that we can also completely remove the language of transportation from the program of studies. I wouldn't want that to get in the way of pushing our offerings back. I mean, we can remove that language, we could technically amend it later once it, you know, we get more, we just were
Solid information.
trying to be as transparent with parents
Right.
about what we know. And the program of studies is our menu of all the options and everything about our school division, including assessments that we give and.
No, I
you know,
think you're right. I
Yeah.
think you should remove that because we wanna be transparent with what we know.
Right.
And with transportation,
Right.
we don't know.
I just
At least
wouldn't
this board
want
doesn't
that
know
language to get
anything. So-
like, in the way of a vote. So we can certainly remove that language, if we could get a vote
Yeah.
to
I
pass the
prefer
program of
that.
Program of
studies.
studies
Will
move forward
be-
tonight, so it's adopted, so we can have our
Right.
program
Yeah.
information nights in
Absolutely.
early December.
Yeah.
And so people
So
know
let's-
what the offerings are, and then we can come back and say, hey, we will come back with more information on what travel
We
looks
owe it
like.
to them to make sure that they know what their
Before they
offerings are
accept.
before they go to these discovery nights on December 3rd.
Would there be a possibility that we would not provide transportation to any student electing the program outside their assigned school?
Well, if we
Because
decide
that's
that
what I
parents
think
have
the
to get their
parents
kids to
need
a
to be
hub.
aware of when the students are applying. So if we're going to provide transportation one way or another, then I'm okay with it. But otherwise, I think it could impact, what they're applying for, or what, truth
So
in
I think-
advertising, what are you getting?
You said that is there an option where we don't provide transportation?
Yes.
I feel like we said a month ago, especially with Ms. Halstead speaking, everything is on the table for transportation. We need to look at this and figure it out.
I mean,
That's
we-
the truth right
yeah.
there.
If-
So
So we may
everything is an
not.
option.
So-
I
so-
mean, it's not a popular option, and I don't even know if that would have to vote, like knowing you find women on this board, but that's an option that's gonna be explored, because she said she was gonna explore it. And I think that's why I'm saying it now, so people can hear that
Right,
is
and-
an
and
option.
I think we need to remember that you can't have specialty programs for high school negatively impacting elementary, middle school, and early childhood. And I definitely heard from elementary school principals very upset with how things were going. And so I just need more information. I wanna make sure that we aren't, robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And we're not real clear about that. So
It's 'cause we don't
there's
have
no
any-
report, there's
Yeah.
no,
It's really holding us up.
So can we say that, we have not determined whether we're gonna be able to provide transportation? I don't have a problem with what you're saying, Ms. Guy, but I just want to disclose it. As a parent, I would wanna know, if I'm signing my child up for a program that's across the county, how are they gonna get there? Am I gonna have to drive them, which I may or may not have, the resources to
Ability,
do
yeah.
that?
No, I
So
think you're
I think
right.
we have to disclose, here, and if we're gonna take this out, then we should put some other information in, even if it says, we don't know yet. We'll make an effort, but we can't
Ms. Healy,
guarantee
I
that we're gonna.
I do
provide
agree
it.
with you that the transportation language could impact a parent's decision, pro or con, right? I do think that we could remove the language from the program of studies so that we're not overpromising anything. I do think that we could over-communicate the transportation final decisions prior to and with the notifications that are sent out starting on February 17th.
Oh, so
That
gives
buys
time.
us
That gives us
time
time.
That
Yeah.
gives us time.
to
That
make
gives us
those
time.
final decisions. And like I said, and I mean, over-communicate, meaning ad nauseum.
But
Like,
we'll have,
and we would include it right in the top of their notification letter, please note.
But that's great, once they know what they're gonna accept, but what about if it impacts what they're gonna apply for? I just,
I
you
feel
know,
like they need to apply and see if they've, I mean, that's what we tell
Yeah,
our
but-
children, you
yeah.
can't make a decision on how you're gonna get there if you're not even in.
well,
Right.
but if my,
But you're right.
my priorities are gonna be reflected in how I'm accepted, and, you know, the computer's gonna bump me
Can
up
we
and
make an
down, it may
announcement
make a
that
difference.
transportation has not been, details haven't been worked out when you're doing your information nights, so that we
As
say,
the-
these are
as
the
the lead.
options, these are the options, and this is what we hope to do, but, I
Now-
mean, just so that we're giving parents at least some
I
information
think
in the beginning.
that parents would at least want to hear that some form of transportation might be available, that, and some might have longer lengths of time than others as potential.
The thing is
I-
that they can apply and they can always say, oh, you know, by February, we should have a report, we should have maybe a decision with this board. But
Yeah.
it would also give them the opportunity to say, oh, well, that's a program that we can't do, delete.
Yeah.
And, you know, or, oh, that transportation worked out to a way that my child can participate, okay, accept.
And I
So,
think.
I mean, they can at least apply,
Yeah.
that's not gonna stop them,
That's
and they
nice.
can just say yes or no when they get their acceptance.
I think we'd all agree too that going forward, we would like to have this information in the program of studies available to parents, exactly like the
Right.
types of transportation and how it all works. At this time, we're just, not able to do that to make sure that we're not overpromising on the front
And I
end.
think until the programs are full four-year programs, we won't really even know what that would look like.
It does take time to see like how many students are gonna be transporting themselves and,
Yeah.
Well, and
So
you know,
it's-
I guess I have a little bit of two things. First is, bringing on another program for me gives me a huge pause because of the fact that I would like to see the effects of who stayed in the program and who left the program because of whatever, whether it be not what I thought it was, transportation, I don't wanna be a part of that school, I wanna stay with my friend, whatever. I would like to see how those numbers kind of play out for 2 years. The other thing is, and, I've talked with Dr. Chase too, is Governor's School is 3 locations, and every other program is 1. And I just wonder, in these programs that we have, openings for 90 students in a cohort, and we have 90 students total in Governor's School, would it be worth us looking at a one-site option for Governor's School as well? We didn't do, we just did it for IB with no, parent input or whatever, we just did it. But I'm just wondering, has that been looked at as an option as well? It's a cohort of 90 kids, just like our other ones, they're all at one site, this is at 3. And I'm wondering if that would even help change, or whatever, transportation too.
Yeah, a final decision, it has been looked at, to answer your question, extensively. We've had a number of conversations. There are possibilities for one school program, you could do it in 2, but if you did it in 2, you would have to move it 60 at one and 30 at another
Right.
because of classes. And then the third option would be leaving it the same as it is. Just at this time, we just weren't ready to make that decision, and all the parties hadn't been discussed. We had a turnover in
Yes,
the leadership of CGS, which
Yeah.
is an important factor, and,
Yeah.
you
And there
know,
was a
and
lot
then
of things that needed
we
to
had
be righted that, hadn't been in a while.
Yeah.
So,
I think
So,
the
but
bottom
it is
line
on the
is-
discussion list,
But
certainly.
can
But I
we
also
get our
think-
contract, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But it's important because our contract is very specific about notice and timing and things like that. So if we are considering a
Oh,
change,
certainly.
I think we need to look at that to see what our options are.
Sure.
Right, and we can't
No,
do
no.
it for next year.
I just,
It would
Yeah, it's
have
not-
to be.
Not- not-
2026.
Another year.
so I just think it's important that we are I mean, we can be as transparent as we want about transportation and then have to acknowledge that most, like, if people aren't paying attention, they aren't paying attention, and we can do only so much to get them to read the stuff or to figure it out. I think we've been very open about the fact that we have fixes that we need to make, and there is no solution that is right in front of us, that's a quick trigger pull, except for a couple of the ones that we've managed to do this issue, right? So there are some things that we need to look at moving forward if we're gonna accommodate these programs becoming bigger and creating a transportation burden on us. I agree with Ms. Guy, if we take this statement out now, that gives us just a little bit more time to talk about it and doesn't delay anything else, and it maybe hopefully makes everybody feel a little bit more comfortable that if we're working on language, however that comes to be, for us to be able for us to be more comfortable as well with what's gone on at transportation, the resolutions. Because we also have to be able to articulate not only what's happening, but what the school is doing to address those things to the constituents when they.
But the program of studies it's no longer printed out, right? We're not handing those to people anymore.
It is.
We provide paper copies in schools, but no,
Okay.
not.
So most parents are gonna see it online anyway, so maybe even, like, when you have your language of, we don't know
yeah.
what we're doing, we could even have like, but check our transportation
Yeah.
update page.
We certainly.
Which will then say, we don't know what we're doing for the specialty centers.
So
But
my-
at least they can, but when we do know, it'll be put there as well, and so a parent who's not super engaged but cares about this knows that they have a site where they can go click and say, did they figure it out yet? Nope, come back next week. Does that make sense what I'm
Yes.
saying?
It does.
That's what would have helped me if I
And
cared.
we can technically amend it at any point in time.
Yeah, 'cause it's
So
the
there was
update,
the
yeah.
transportation piece. The other piece that members of the board have talked about is whether or not to bring on a fourth program next year, or whether to pause that. So I'm just, before we get out to the dais, I'm just curious where people are with that.
Might I provide a little bit of information
Sure.
regarding the implications if you were to make a
Sure.
change?
Sure.
Number one, we've spent a great deal of time with the business community and with staff developing the new center at Colonial Forge. I know that Mr. Green and many others have been at the table every single time and super eager about building out this program. And you know how much, specifically Mr. Green, Vernon Green, is supporting the cybersecurity work, including, he's really excited about the possibility of what we would call a war room, which is a cybersecurity war room at Colonial Forge, which is just exciting opportunity for kids. And so he is deeply ingrained in all those discussions. I do think it would be very disappointing to some of our business community if we were to delay. That's just one point. Number two, there would be subsequent decision points if we were to delay the Colonial Forge Center, because when we open the new high school in 26, 27, we would certainly want to open the center with the high school. It would seem to make sense. So then that pushes the center at North off another year till 27, 28, if we were to do only two in 1 year. I will tell you that our accelerated timeline with the current year, it was a lot to launch 3 centers at one time this year. And so we would prefer to do no more than 2 in a given year, especially given the instance around a new high school. There are a lot of unknowns. But the additional time, now, so on the counterpoint, the additional time, one of the focal points of the proposed center at North Stafford includes aviation. I will tell you that we are digging deep into that, but it takes a lot of time to develop a partner that can really support aviation, because those big players are typically closer into major airports. And so there's a geographic piece there, and so we're exploring some things in drone technology and others, but the additional time could benefit in terms of mapping out a program that's really meeting the community's needs or the region's needs. But just to keep those things in mind and as you're making a decision, I would love to see the Center for Colonial Forge open next year. I will tell
So
you.
could I ask a quick question? I know that our concerns with this center, some are curricular, like whether we can support it with students and staff. but also on the transportation side, whether it's going to overcomplicate an already overcomplicated situation. As of right now, do we already have a bus going from 4 high schools to Forge and from
We do.
Forge? Okay, so that part at least may not be
That is correct.
overcomplicated, because again, we'd be adding students
And
to
we can adjust the
already-
number of students going to Colonial Forge to match roughly what we are doing this year.
Taking out.
So can I put a, I'm just gonna throw my hat in the ring on this one, it was, because Colonial Forge is in Hartwood, close to my heart, but, I am not for putting it off at this point in the game. I think Colonial Forge has been doing cyber stuff all along, as it were, programmatically. I'm not sure how much of a stretch, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
Moving it to a specialty center status is gonna have on it, but cyber is, and AI is the biggest career path that is, I mean, it's blowing up, and there are kids that are really gonna be missing that opportunity in one of the fundamentally most, actively sought out fields that we have. And to Mr. Bowling's point, like, Vernon Green has been very vocal and supportive of things, and has invested, I think, probably more time than anyone else, and has been really excited about being able to draw from our pool of talent, and I just don't think delaying that. I think we had baptism by fire this year. Hopefully we've learned from some of our mistakes and we won't make them again in the new center, but cyber it's huge, and I think we're doing a very big disservice to our kids if we delay that pathway or that specialty center. That's just my opinion.
Would it be fair to say that we've already laid some of the foundational pieces to get the program the Pathways program at Colonial Forge up and running?
Oh, absolutely.
With
We already have
teachers?
business classes there.
And
We already
teachers.
have a dual
That's what I'm
enrollment
about.
business teacher. We have,
There's
So,
the
we spent this year
infrastructure's
kind
there.
of putting the infrastructure in place.
Yeah, it's there, it's ready, it's prime, and everybody's really, really excited about it.
So we won't
Just-
be getting an email the day after the vote from somebody at the school telling us that that's not true,
Cause that's what all.
right? I just wanna
I
make
am
sure.
not aware of anyone that's upset about it. I think that they were more upset at the possibility when we said there is the possibility that it might be delayed.
Well, and to be clear, our industry in this area, and defense contracting and everything else, is cybersecurity focused, so our partnerships there
Are stronger than
are
they
stronger
here.
than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So for me, I just think, I'm gonna have to always err on the side of, the access to what our kids can have, and in this particular instance, we've been doing cyber programming and certificates for them along the way. This just brings it to a cohesive, cohort, but also, just to a cohesive process for us for these kids to really be able to feel like, to your point about like a security center, a war room thing or whatever, like those are things that like, they're not gonna get anywhere else, and we have the talent here to bring it in because of where we are located and what it is here.
What infrastructure or support would be needed to enhance that school ready to go for the first freshman group to come in? Is there any that you would have like, oh, that's our summer project?
The only things that that would be needed, we've already identified the funding for through the CTE grant that we,
Right,
or,
right,
I'm
the
sorry,
1 million.
allocation that we received from the
Right.
state. And there have been discussions about the business community supporting also some of the other needs that they might have.
But are these projects currently underway in anticipation for a freshman cohort? Or are these, we'll get to it over the summer, or is it years out, like what's?
It doesn't take wall changes currently, so no, those are not underway. However, they can be underway at any time.
And how does the ongoing funding for this program work? Because my experience with computers and technology is that
They're absolutely going to order them.
they're obsolete within a year or two, and so do we have a funding stream to keep?
I think it's a
keep
bit
this
more
going?
than a year or two, but yes, I think that you have your cyclical replacement program, and it allows for specialty computers in that for certain programs already. And so I feel pretty confident we also have the funding set aside that supports the centers, in the annual funding, so.
Are we exploring any alternatives if the aviation pathway doesn't work out at North Stafford?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask
I think
respectfully,
we
why
would-
don't we just push it back, because you have mentioned twice that the extra time would only give you more time to make deeper connections and to flush it out. Not that I wanna push it
Yeah.
back, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying
I-
respectfully,
I will say that
but-
we're also really good at nailing deadlines, so
Okay,
like,
all right.
so
I
if,
just-
if we need to expedite it, we can do it, I
So do
mean,
we feel that we can pull that together, is what I'm
absolutely.
asking?
For,
Or do
for,
we-
for
are we-
26,
Are
27,
we
yes.
considering
We can pull it
Plan
off, yeah.
Bs?
No, she's asking about North, right?
Yeah, North.
Yeah, for, I mean, we could pull it off in 26, 27 with the new high school, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, if we, I mean, obviously, we're gonna talk about it again a little bit, but one, food is out there, if you wanna migrate and bit by bit, but, we do need to get on with our 10-year enrollment projections.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go get mine.
It is, we truly believe that, we trust that.
Yes.
That's, okay. Just making sure.
Wait,
You got the other one.
First, I'm gonna pass these down.
Wait, no,
I'm gonna give it to you.
Oh, all right.
No, what we doing?
we don't want Ms.
No,
Bowen.
you're still standing
Put up the
up.
papers.
Maya, can you take one and pass one to Chris, so sure he doesn't need it, but and then that way. Alyssa. Yes.
If you see mine,
Any copy? Yeah.
Do you guys have to do that?
I think it's just that. Yeah.
I'll take it with me downstairs.
You can go ahead and go to the.
Thank you though.
Hey, good to see you.
I only have one question.
You have to hold it till the end. No, it's good.
I wrote it down and everything, so I wouldn't forget it, God bless.
Alright, is this what you sent us?
Yeah.
Okay, I read it.
All right, so we're gonna start off the projection, the presentation by first talking about our official count this year. It's 31,436 students. That was an increase of 310 kids, 1% growth year over year. PK enrollment, 32,087 students. That also grew 1%. Last year's projection was 99% accurate district-wide. That was 1% fewer students than anticipated. And the projections for individual schools this year were really accurate, precise, I use that word. There's 28 out of 30 schools hitting the mark. So that's 93%. Of our schools had a 95% accuracy or better. Just to give you a frame of reference, most school systems aim for 80% and they hit somewhere between 60 and 70s.
What?
And last year we were 27 out of 30, so we did have some improvement this year.
Wow, no, he deserves a Christmas present.
All right. So here are the actual projections. You can see the number of students over the next decade. Very high level. We're anticipated to grow 2,400 students over the next 5 years and a total of 6,200 plus students over the next decade. And of course, this is absolute worst case scenario, assuming all new developments build out and give us students and all that other stuff.
And just to clarify, the 5-year is a lot more accurate when you get to the outer years that it assumes most of the build out.
Yes.
And that's funny because I actually think the out years, 10 years from now, those are probably more realistic numbers given what can happen in those 10 years and how much.
Well, if
Can
it's
be done.
predictable, it's preventable, so if you can predict it out there, whether it's happening or not, you should be able to at least plan for it.
Would you see anybody trying to stop the
Make
building
an accurate
right
plan
now?
for it, right,
Or not?
Well, these are things that probably have already been through the approval and they
yes.
essentially can't be stopped.
I still think there's.
There's a workaround. Chain yourself to a
Workaround
tree
for
somewhere on the
everything.
small
You just gotta find it.
So at a really high level, the projections methodology, it's based on resident live births. We use that to figure out future kindergarten cohorts. We also use a 3-year history of enrollment change. We call that our cohort transition rate. And also we look at the anticipated student yield from future housing units. Just to throw a stat at you, there are 5,100 plus active vacant lots in the county. And if you read the red disclaimer there, you know, this is a projection, it's not actuals.
Right.
So it's our best guess based on the best information we have available. All right, so next steps in the projections process. We'll get the projections approved and then share them with the county. I'm also working on updating the elementary program capacity numbers for this year. And in January, we'll release the very detailed enrollment accommodation plan report, where you can really dive into the details of what's going on in the
Always
projections.
exciting reading.
Thank you. Okay.
I just had one, my only question honestly was, and I wrote it down just curious, but these don't account for, I know it's an unknown, but how come we don't account for the schools that are coming, like elementary school 18 and 19 in here, and what those totals might look like across the board, and then the same with high school 6? Like, how come they're not in here as like a placeholder or an option to see?
Gotcha. So the answer to that question is, this is purely the projections. Once we get our program capacity numbers for elementary school and so forth, then in the enrollment accommodation plan, we will add in those schools and we'll show what the projected capacity will be.
We don't know what the boundaries are yet for
Yeah.
for
Well, so
those
I
schools, so we
figured
can't
that.
show the impact on the other schools
So
yet.
will we, then do we just, so wait, we're waiting until after we do the elementary school redistricting, or do we just assume a full school? Or are you assuming some projections based on, so you
Once
just
we
said,
do
once
the-
we'll the enrollment accommodation plan?
Correct. We'll have elementary program capacity numbers, but at the same time, we will update, we'll add capacity. So you're not seeing capacity now, you're only seeing projected enrollment.
Okay,
Once
All
the,
right.
once the plan comes out, you'll see capacity and the enrollment projections on the same charts.
okay.
So that way you can see how crowded the school is. We're not at that step yet.
So
Okay, I just
on
wanted to
here,
make sure, cause I was like, wait, why don't we, all right, but that makes sense.
on here where you say next steps, enrollment projections approved and shared with county,
Uh-huh.
when will this be shared with county? And specifically,
Thank you.
with whom on county side? Because there seems to be a little bit of possible disconnect from who receives and who receives the information and the message that is received.
Interesting. Mr. Fulmer, you wanna help me out with that? Who do we, is that Andrea Light is the one that gets our
Is that-
projection?
Typically county administrator, but we can make sure it gets sent to everybody, our updated projections and our CIP.
To, when you say everybody,
The county administrator, budget staff, and board of supervisors.
and when you do that, can you CC our board, just so
Yeah.
we know? Like, you know, Alyssa and I, I'm sorry, Ms. Halsted, and I
like
sat
Alyssa
down
better.
with Mr. English and Mr. Diggs for a conversation. So if I know that there's something that they did receive, because I was CC'd in on it, it helps us in our conversations, because we've kind of made an agreement that we're gonna, you know, talk about things with our counterparts and together here to get us through this budget season with a new county administrator and potential new superintendent. So that's why I'm just, if we can, if you forward it to them, if you would CC us so we know who received what and when, it would help us with our conversations going forward as well.
Will do.
Thank
Well, and
you.
also it allows us to forward that email to them and ask them if they received it, like just confirming you received this, if there's anything you wanna talk about, so it's,
Yeah,
it's nice for us
keep
to
our
have that.
conversations,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's also easier for us to find it.
100%.
When we wanna go back to it,
And
it's like,
we're
I
being
know
held
it's an
accountable
email.
as our day, so, thank you.
Okay, so now I'll move on to the next presentation.
The only thing, can we, I wish we could get a column that shows the
Capacity.
capacity
Mhm.
for our elementary, for our schools with the 10-year projections.
Yes.
Just because that would make it
As
easier.
an added column.
Yes, we're gonna have that in
In
that
the- I know
enrollment
it's in the
accommodation
Enrollment
plan.
accommodation
Okay.
plan.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is purely
Thank you.
projections, yeah.
Gotcha,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So next, let's move on to redistricting.
Everybody's favorite.
And I'll open the floor.
Favorite topic.
So there's not, already shared with you kind of the additional scenarios that created based on last week's discussion. So really this is a opportunity for additional feedback or questions versus the actual presentation.
I think you can take F2 off the table. I think it's just not
Oh, we
gonna
have to go
work.
around and make sure there's agreement with that.
I mean, I'm not sure where the conversation begins anymore, so I'm not gonna offer to start it, but
But I'm gonna start it.
But I do think it's important to know, but actually, I'm gonna start it by saying, like, I really feel like this guy is the one that has, like, to take a look at this, because it is to look at Brook Point, like, I feel like we can't get that school under 100% ever. And to your point last week, like, I think we just need to be really cognizant of the scenarios and the amount of weight it's putting on Brook Point High School. Like G2 is 107% at Brook Point.
G is 108.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ones that I think on its face value are glaringly obvious, but that's me. But to your point, on Thursday's meeting, I mean, there is some concern for Brook Point.
Yeah, and you know, as
But we
the
have to be
representative-
solution-oriented.
Yeah.
We know we
Yeah.
definitely do, but I think my frustration last week was that plans were put in place that put Brook Point, and I mentioned North in my private meeting with Mr. White, but like plans were brought forward and it's like, yeah, 108%. Well, cause it's not y'all's district, so it really did seem like, and then you look at the graphic and like most of the plans have Brook Point well over 100%. It's like, dang, tell me you don't care about a quiet district without telling me you don't care about a quiet district. Because then we have saying, well, for this district and for that district, whereas when I went into it, I was like, gee, what's best for all the students in Stafford? I was like, nope, I don't want that, because there's no way I'm comfortable putting a school at this disadvantage. But I just wish that my other board members felt that way.
Well, okay,
That's how it seemed with
okay,
all the
but we're being
plans.
solution-oriented here, so what would be your solution in all the options that we've been given that would remotely address your concerns? Because it's not that none of us care about being quiet.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
when
not,
I-
it's
when
just
I
that we
went
all
in
come at
and
this
looked
with
at,
different lenses.
So that's why I went in and your plan, I just pushed more students into
Yeah.
Mountain
Mountain
View.
View.
And this put us at 101 and 106.
I would be willing to go back and add back in scenario F if you think that would be a more helpful option to you, Ms. Guy.
I am not willing to
Yeah.
adjust our timeline at all. I feel like even when it was done on Thursday was wrong. So I'm not gonna adjust our timeline
I don't wanna
and
adjust
bring
our
it, what I'm
timeline.
saying is, and bring it, we're not here to bring in more tweaks, are we? I thought we were here
Right,
to
but I'm just saying, we have
whittle
2
stuff
more
down.
public hearings, so if there is
Yeah.
something that,
If
if you wanna
bring
go
it
with
back-
one of the solutions that we have, we can do that. If adding back a
I don't wanna
scenario would
open up
make
that
it feel
door because
better.
then someone else is gonna bring in more, and it's like, gosh darn it,
Well,
guys.
we're working with you.
I'm working, and as always, I'm working with you guys too. I just stated how
I-
it looked, that's it.
I hear you, and I would like to be, you know, how can we fix that?
Wait,
How
it's
can we
so
work
weird
with
to
that?
look at that piece.
So, I also think it's important to recognize, I gotta go on the record again as saying, like, I don't like this process at all in terms of the amount of them. I know we have to share each of these scenarios as we develop them, but as we can see from emails, it's really confusing for folks that can't keep track. And we are trying to put together a reasonable, set of scenarios that addresses some very specific priorities for each of the board members. But like budget, because it's ever changing, I think it causes, and it's, you know, not against you, I mean, clearly it's a process that we have to do, but it is causing more strife in it, because we're constantly sending out emails to parents, and they're having a difficult time juggling where we're even at, and so I just wish we could build it. I mean, I hope we never have to do it again, but given that we probably might, I just wish, you know, in a few weeks with elementary schools, I just wish we had a better system for not confusing people with too many scenarios as discussions begin, because that is the point of all this, right, is discussions, is taking what you give us. I'm trying to figure out how to accommodate an entire county, but also hopefully represent our constituents the right way. That's all. That's all I got to say.
So, that's, and it really did. I think that's a good one.
So
So, I think that's-
F2, I think, is the one we asked to be brought back today,
Right.
with the understanding that we would keep either F1 or F2. do we wanna poll the board on which we would like to continue forward with? I mean, I guess in theory, we could do both, I don't know if that's helpful, so.
Well, this guy, how do you feel about F2?
Let me, can I look at it? You
Yeah.
guys can keep talking and let me.
I'm a no
digest.
on F2.
Yeah, I'm a no on F2.
Well, I mean,
So,
114% at
North Stafford.
North Stafford is not.
No.
Yeah,
But it
that's not
also
gonna work.
puts Brooke at 80%.
Yeah,
So it just, and then, you end up with, EL students at, North Stafford at 28%, which is almost a third of the population, and it just, I think it completely blows up the numbers. So I understand transportation's position about that neighborhood, but, it just, it blows up the numbers in a way that I think is not healthy.
And then we had a similar conversation where we asked for an option G2 to be brought back, so that we could compare it against option G.
F, G is after.
I'm a no.
Say that again, Susan, you're a
I'm a
no
no.
to.
Two.
To which one?
G2.
I'd suggest everybody look at page
Yeah, because
25.
it puts,
I'm not, a fan of these 30, 20, 32 numbers, not because I don't have confidence in Mr. White, it's just that I find it hard to believe everything's gonna be built out. But, that having been said, if this is a consideration, I think this is the chart that shows, you know, it's not good. The Brook Point only has one scenario that is under 100.
That's my whole point. I
And
don't
that's
know
why
why.
I think if we wanted
But
to,
none
we
of
could
them
look at bringing back F,
None of them
because
are
it
at
does do
Forge,
better.
and there are none at Forge.
But
And I think
What did
that
F
might
look
have been a
like?
conversation.
At F, it's 100, it's 97 at North, 101 at Brook, and 100 at Forge. And then the others are 94, 96, 94, 99. So 101 is the top capacity in 2032.
In F, which is not in our packet right now.
So I
just
think that this might have been our
she's got F.
kind of, I don't know if error is the right word, but I think at the beginning of this process, staff knew right away that at the end, at the out years of this process, we would have 2 high schools that would be over capacity because we just are gonna have more students than seats. They explained to us that their goal was to have the bulk of that overcapacity sitting in the northeast of our county,
Yeah.
because that is where we have indicated we believe high school 7 should be. And that would help to like illustrate that need and have less of an impact on future redistrictings.
We also
So
have more
we,
choices with Colonial Forge at 106.
right, so it started with staff recommending North and Brook Point.
Yes.
Because of infrastructure issues with the building itself of North, not necessarily any population concerns, but because of the actual structure, we shifted that burden to Forge and Brook Point. So I think that's why this page 25 looks the way it does, because that's essentially where we allowed, directed, asked for the burden to be placed. And in the future, that might be a conversation we have earlier in the process.
But it sounds
if
like
that's
there was
smarter.
another option that was on the table that would have reduced those numbers for both Brook and Forge.
But I guess,
There
I
was
get that
F.
there are, but if it would have put the burden at like, let's say, high school 6 and Stafford, that's a totally different.
But none of
Forge.
these
It wouldn't
change.
use
High
Forge.
school 6 and Stafford are exactly the same, correct, Mr. White?
Yes.
On every scenario, so you might as well just put them aside, since there's no impact on them.
So the one that changes on F to F1 is Colonial Forge, not Brook Point.
Yes,
So it's
that's
not.
the only difference.
It's the only
It
difference.
impacted only North and Forge, it did not impact any other school.
But what did you say that Forge and Brook Point were under F
Under F,
and North?
Brook Point would be 101 and Forge would be 100.
Okay, so that would help Forge, but it wouldn't help Brook Point from any of these, because Brook Point's lowest, other than the 80,
Yeah, but
is
80
is
seems too
101.
low,
This is
right?
101.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't like 80 because
No.
I think it
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
away potential
Programs.
programs, it
Yep.
takes
Yes.
away staff.
Yes.
And it is a disadvantage to the students to
agreed.
be in a school with 80.
Right.
So in effect, there are no options for Brooke that.
You know, that's
No,
the
that's
problem.
not true, hold on, Maya, let me ask you a question.
Down to 100%.
So when we look at it at 101%, at that point in the game, and Chris, you guys can answer this as well, we could do a spot redistrict at that point, right? To
To Forge.
alleviate some of that burden.
Sure.
Cause we'll have a better picture
I mean, I'm
then.
leaning towards F1, 101.
Is that, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, is that the number? So again, you know how I feel, like, at 105%, I'm not in that high school, so I can't, to me, 105% is way too much. I don't care if we might be fine, I'm not in those schools, I'm not those kids, 105% could feel like 300% to some.
So they're at 108% right now.
Right, so that's the thing, like, but at that point, if we know we
Yeah.
can get to 101, we could redistrict, not,
The
yeah, we
superintendent
could spot
could, yes.
redistrict, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain
we need
kids to
to.
alleviate that burden at
Yeah.
that time, because then we
At
have.
that time. Yeah, where are they in 2030, or 2029?
In
I
F1.
mean,
In F1.
That's
thing
on
that-
24.
91%.
The thing that
91,
jumped
yeah.
out to me with F1 that was my sort of only concern was
Yeah.
the 75% North Stafford. I mean, that means
In
that
2026,
there may
yeah.
be, 2026, that may be programs are gonna disappear at North as a result of that.
I know, it is a hardship to have that low of a
As,
capacity,
as,
because it's students,
having
it's
Drew
staff.
in
Yes.
my neighborhood,
It's-
I know that being at 75% is going to change things a lot at
So,
North
But
Stafford.
it's still 2,000 students.
How many kids again are in this thing that are in this
So, I
piece
mean,
up here,
I-
which
I
was the
don't
big
know.
difference,
300
right,
to
between F1
450
and
over the next
F2?
10 years.
That's how many
So
kids
in
is it?
It
2027,
ranges
there are
300
2,001
now,
students at
And it'd
North
be
Stafford.
projected to be about
With F1.
450, 10 years from now.
So that's why it blows us so
But it
big
does.
from
Yes.
F1 to
Yes.
F2, that's that
Mr. White,
neighborhood.
That's
How
in
many-
2027.
Oh, maybe
That's in
maybe it's
2027.
How many
Maybe it's 1,500, I'm sorry.
How many?
Yeah, it's 50.
North
1,500.
Stafford,
I was reading the wrong
25%.
North
column.
Stafford has 75%
From 2001.
So that's
capacity. How many
1,500.
students is that?
1523.
1523, it's not
Yeah.
2,000,
Yeah,
okay.
I was reading the wrong number,
So that's,
sorry.
out of every 4 students there, 1 would be gone.
Oh my God, you did that math in your head?
Yes.
That's
So that's
fascinating.
75.
Some of these
But
kids
you
are
had to plug that into
very
my phone.
My
cerebral.
last math was in the 10th grade in high school, that I never took any math after that.
I know, but you
You
use it
did
in
that
your
in your
daily
head.
work.
Insanity.
So, do we want to keep F1 and F2, or do we want to
Not
not
F2.
bring
Not
forward
F2.
F2?
Not up to.
And I'm sorry, I have to say
Okay.
down, we have to get rid of G. Because
Same.
we
G or
cannot,
G2?
I mean, I don't know, but actually.
She doesn't even know, she's like, she just
No,
knows we
I
have to get
had
rid
to
of
go
it.
back, I had to go back to G two. I can't, Mountain View cannot stay at 85, 87%, while Brook and Colonial Forge are 100%, 106%, or 100, and there's not enough growth in that particular area to justify this to me, whereas I might be able to make a little bit of the argument moving forward, like I said, if we're at 101%, between Brook and Colonial Forge, we could probably make it, but Mountain View is, that whole area is it's such a geographical behemoth without, you know what I'm saying?
It is,
Thank you.
it really is.
So
It's
that's my
just-
concern, scenario G does not have, there's not enough justification to have 2 schools in the red at 106% and Mountain View 87% all the way across the board, and that's my concern.
Well, and I can't do G2 at 107 at Brook.
Yeah,
That's
It's
just
too
not gonna
much.
work.
yeah. I mean,
For
it does
G2.
take some of the pressure off Colonial Forge, but Brooke then becomes overwhelmed, so.
Well, it's those 3 students that Dr. Cheese advocated for.
It does,
Ruins
doesn't
everything.
it, doesn't it really look like, I mean, gosh, that whole chunk of
I mean, she
land
just
went to Brooke.
Ruin everything, we're 3
Those
students.
3 students.
Those 3 kids.
That's crazy.
It's de minimis.
You
I know.
remember that was the recommendation of staff, though.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll blame them first, and then, yeah.
Yep, Lionel.
Transportation, don't we?
That's so funny.
Man, that is a hot potato. Those 3
The
kids,
problem is, it's
they're a
hard
hot
to,
potato.
it's
Seriously, right?
the geographic location
Tipping the
of
scales.
Mountain View, Colonial Forge, and North Stafford make it really difficult for us to move so many of these planning units around.
Mhm.
And try to keep neighborhoods intact, try to optimize Mountain View, try to manage
create
transportation,
Yeah.
not create any islands. I mean, I feel
But
like,
also create the need that we need to have
right.
in that time frame that we need, that
I-
needs
I-
to
And
be
not
present.
disadvantage students by putting too
Right.
many disadvantaged students for whatever the
Yes.
issue is
Or-
in a school,
yes.
because that, even though I know you guys say, I don't wanna move a kid or not move a kid because of who they are, but that totally tells me you don't
Yeah.
understand what it's like to be at a disadvantaged school,
Right.
clearly. That's what I grew up in. You don't wanna do that. If you love a kid, you would never do that.
So on this.
So are you comfortable with 101 at Brook Point?
I'm comfortable with it because that's all we have to offer me.
I mean, I believe me, I tried to, cause that was, I wanted to try to keep the pressure off Brook Point just because of the number of schools that are there. But it's just,
But what about 106 in Forge? I mean, that's also a consideration.
Which one?
Is it, I'm looking, well,
But we all-
the only, the lowest for
F1.
for Brooke is 101, but if you take the one with 101,
It puts,
you're at 106 at Ford.
yeah,
I don't know, it seems like some kids need to come out of,
But I honestly think that if the board went with F1,
yeah.
and we have Brooke at 101 and Forge at 106, I think it's very easy for the superintendent to do a spot redistricting for those
True.
two schools
True.
and figure it out. And that's an if, because we might not ever get there.
And
Yeah,
that's
'cause we
honestly
don't-
the only
sure, we
reason,
don't
like,
know.
if you had to force me to
Which-
choose between G and G2, why I would go with G2, because it optimizes Mountain View a little more from the get-go, just to start,
yeah.
and knowing that if either Forge or Brook Point, or quite frankly, any of these others kind of blow up in a way that we're not expecting, that the spot redistricting is our emergency backup plan if any of these schools grow quicker than, because for all we know, like, all of Forge's neighborhoods can go up in 2 years, whereas the Brook Point neighborhoods are gonna come in over 10. And it's like, how quickly will that growth hit our community and the students that come with it, versus what's all gonna happen in 10 years? Because we're gonna be doing this every year and watching this every year, but to get us in the best starting spot to, like, kind of be in a better place to manage that growth moving forward, which is not something we've been able to do before because of the way our schools have been laid out.
Yeah, because 2032 is pretty speculative, but we have opportunities for spot redistricting at both Brook and Colonial Forge that we don't necessarily have at Mountain View, or.
But I don't like to talk about it being that speculative, because it's only 6 years after the next high school opens. And that is, I mean, how long has it been since we opened a high school? I mean, between high school 5 and high school 6, there were decades
Yeah.
of growth and
I don't think
planning,
they're gonna have
and
a choice this time.
it's
Yeah.
almost like if we're not already having the conversation by the time high school 6 opens
Well,
about
and
high
that's
school
what the
7, we're
public
gonna be
has-
looking at these numbers and worse.
And the public has been
Because-
asking us to have a conversation about high school 7.
Yes, and because we can't wait 15 years, because then we're gonna be looking at 106 at every school. And that's like why we need these numbers to look the best for our community, but also really represent where the pain points are gonna be, so that we know what we're gonna be doing for high school 7 next.
Which one?
The one behind Lowe, this part
That's-
here,
Mhm.
that was something that, I feel like that's been, since there's like 300 students there.
Yeah.
I've never cared about planning units and what planning unit goes
Same,
wherever. I've
same.
cared about, let's make sure we don't screw over the
A
entire
school.
district of Aquia,
Right.
right?
that's
With
cool. Yes.
That's what I've cared about, and then keeping the numbers to make sense for
Yes.
everyone. But as far as like which unit goes, I really, like, I can't even.
I'm in the same boat with you. Same boat.
Yeah, I'm fine with whatever makes sense for everybody.
Okay.
But I have sensitivity for demographics that need extra help.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not fine with not looking at that when I look at my numbers. That's
Yeah.
just,
No, that makes
I can't
sense.
do it.
Well,
I'm too
when
much
I
of an
look at
equity
the,
person.
if I look at F1's L population and free and reduced population, F1, talking about specifically, I feel like those numbers are reasonable too.
Right.
Cause that's one of the things, I care about too,
Yeah, that was one of the considerations.
was the free and
we went
reduced,
with,
yeah.
was the free and reduced in the L population, because you go to F2, suddenly North explodes and Brook plummets, and everybody else has got like,
The rest.
less than 20%
Yeah.
and North Stafford
So-
has almost 30, so.
Alright, so what is our goal for this conversation? Are we trying to eliminate, or are we just having
We're listening to
conversation?
people tonight.
Yeah, but I'm
Yes,
just
we
saying, as, in our work session here, what is our, and,
Well, what we said last time, how long ago was it? I don't even know.
less than a week, Thursday.
Last- Um,
A couple days ago.
the idea was to have an either or,
like a
so
no.
we're not building up our numbers of options again.
Yeah,
Obviously, we as a board can decide to keep 5 options, we can go down to 4, to 3, whatever. But the original goal was to be an either or, because when we looked at F1, we thought, well, what if we did this? And same thing with G and G1, what if we did this?
yeah.
So we narrowed
Now
it
we
down
have
from
those
those
answers.
2 to 1. So do we wanna keep both F2 and G2, or do we want to eliminate any, both?
I vote that we
G's got-
eliminate F2.
And
I-
G, because
and
that
G-
G doesn't feel
G2.
Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
But
So,
see, that's the thing, like, you're saying G, you're saying G2,
I'm saying G2.
Well, let's deal with the F first.
so then,
The F,
Eliminate
I would
F2.
say
Let's
I
just
F2.
think
go
there's, I
one
hear
by one and
consensus
see.
on that one, if we can.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
We're not taking any action here, but
Yeah.
when we go and
Yeah.
have our public,
I
hearing
kinda
and
like
discussion,
Dr.
we can
Chase's
have
thing,
that.
you know, keep it at 3 for the brain.
Alright, so so F2, I crossed it out.
I crossed it out
We have
too.
consensus
Okay.
to get rid of F2.
Okay, so now
So
we're
now
having
move
the
on to G.
conversation of G and G2?
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, I know G2 is the most, looks like it's the most, disadvantageous, for lack of a better word, to Brooke, but it's so advantageous to Mountain View that G is that I can't. I'm just being honest, there's just not an argument for me that can be made to keep G.
really, it just, honestly, they are,
I see.
like, F1 has Forge at 106 and Brook Point at 101, and G2 basically flips them.
Yes.
So the
but
burden
it-
is, like,
But it's worse because it keeps Mountain View
Yeah.
in the 80s.
G does.
Right.
Well, are we
Yes.
talking about G or G? Can we just talk like
G.
Okay, so we're talking about G. I'm sorry, I get confused.
Yes.
Alright. So are we keeping, what's the consensus for G? Are we keeping it or tossing it?
I would toss it, I mean, I have,
I'm not disagreeing.
Because Mountain View's at 87%.
across
Okay.
the board.
Across
Alright,
the
who
all
else
the
wants
way
to
out.
toss it?
I would
board.
toss
G.
it.
Okay, G. Alright, so we're tossing G.
It's
We
tossed
think we can get rid of G,
Yeah.
not G2, G.
Well, we haven't gotten to the
We
G2.
haven't
Now we're
gotten
gonna, now we're
Okay.
at G2 to
But
talk.
that's the thing, if we do want 3, then we have to keep either G or G2, not not both and not neither, because that would bring us to 4 or to 2. So we really have to.
If we have to keep one, keep the G2, because I think that we can't do Mountain View at 87% for years. And at least with G2, but then it puts too much pressure on Brook Point.
Okay, so then now we're at 3.
Right,
We're at 3. So we
Okay.
actually did what we came to do.
yeah, we're at 3.
Is there gonna be a
That's
vote?
how
I
G-
just want to make sure we're gonna vote it
Don't
so
make
that way.
Lionel
I would
crazy.
wait until after
but
we
wait
hear the
until-
feedback
Okay,
from
yeah.
the
We
public.
can't
Yeah.
take any action.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
action in the work session.
But I wrote it down what we just said, so we
Okay.
can't act like we don't know what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a quick item closed session, and we can have our
Closed session?
longer closed session after.
Okay.
But do you wanna, can we do that in 20 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
19
I-
minutes?
10.
Okay.
It'll be really quick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lionel, I appreciate your patience with us.
And
Your continued diligence.
So you're gonna just,
Yeah, that's fine.
you're gonna pause it after the first item?
Yeah, we're just gonna do the
and then-
one item on the closed
And
session.
then resume it after the business meeting?
Correct.
Do
See
you
you in a
Actually,
minute.
stop here. She doesn't need to read the second item. You're not doing the second item right
Correct.
now?
No, you have to
Right.
just stop here?
Yep.
So I'm gonna
So
stop.
somebody will make
Well, for
an,
purposes of the agenda, we probably should read it, and then at the end, we can take a continue
adjust the
it.
agenda.
Okay, so I'll read
And
the
then
whole
we'll adjust
Good
the
point.
agenda for the,
Okay, I'll read the whole thing
I
then.
did it.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
so
Go.
Go.
read it all.
Well, they're still in here. Oh,
No,
I'm
you're
allowed
reading
to
it, read it.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Taking a vote,
I
yeah.
We're gonna
moved-
take a vote.
Okay, I apologize. I move that the board convene a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 to discuss or consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose warehouse space, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1. to discuss and/or consider salary and other contract terms for prospective candidates for employment as division superintendent. I got excited.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yay.
We're in closed session.
I'm shut the door, but this
That's
has,
all? Shut the door. Hold on.
this has to be done.
Is this off? Rachel, are we off? It's green.
It's still green.
Yeah.
They're watching me put on my lipstick. Pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the closed meeting held by the school board during its work session on November 12, 2024 be certified by adopting the following resolution. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of Stafford County, Virginia hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
Second.
Dr. Chase,
Agree.
Ms. Guy,
Agree.
Ms. Halsted,
Agree.
Ms. Healy. Agree. Ms. Randall,
Agree.
Ms. Sigmund,
Agree.
and Dr. Warner.
Agree.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Does anyone have any action coming out of closed session? Okay. If you'd please rise for the presentation of colors and the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you this evening to our color guard from Stafford High School's Navy JROTC, Cadet Bomback, Cadet Thompson, Cadet Sacco, Cadet Bourne, and Cadet Anderson. And thank you to their leadership, the Command Master Chief Wilson. Can I have a roll call, please?
Dr. Chase,
Here.
Ms. Guy. Here. Ms. Dooku,
Here.
Ms. Halsted,
Here.
Ms. Healy. Here. Ms. Adedagun. Here. Ms. Randall,
Here.
Ms. Sigmund,
Here.
and Dr. Warner.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Could I have a approval or a change to the agenda?
Madam Chair, motion to approve the agenda with the addition of a closed session at the end.
Second.
All those in favor, please cast your votes.
Madam Chair,
Or-
could we just clarify that that closed session is a continuation of the one we finished, so that there's nothing new that has not already been reported?
Noticed, thank you.
Thank you.
Please, any further discussion? If not, please cast your votes.
It's not working.
No, it's not even, usually it says one, oh, there it is.
Motion carries 7-0.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Any Any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have two questions for item number 3.04. There is a number of folks that were listed, 4 or 5 folks for the elementary school and the high school representatives for the Curriculum Resource Committee, but there is no one for middle school. Is there a reason for that?
I had the same question, actually.
Should we pull it to action and remove it from consent?
Well, why don't we see if we get a quick
I mean, because
answer?
there was a bunch of other things. I'm just curious if there's a reason for that.
So there are no middle school resources being adopted in this cycle.
Okay.
It's only elementary and high school.
Okay, all right. That's my first question. And my second one is, for the 3.05 award of the contract to, and they were talking about adding on bays. Just a curiosity, what size bus are these additional bays going to accommodate? Are they going to also be too small?
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is the same square footage as the bays that are down there now.
So it won't fit a full 77 totally in there? If
No,
it needs-
it's just what they could
What they
fit in one of their
currently have.
bays now, because we're just basically removing the loft and other walls in there to make it open.
Okay, so it's still not gonna fit our full-size buses?
No, this is not a
Okay.
permanent fix, it's just a little.
Okay, that's just what I was curious about. Thank you.
And it doesn't eliminate the need for future.
No,
fleet
I know
base
that.
space.
I was just curious as to what size bus. Thank you. That's
Any
all.
other discussion? Please cast your votes. Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Fulmer, announcement of administrative personnel appointments.
Yes, I'd like to welcome up to the podium Ms. Deanna Fiaro. Ms. Fiaro will be the new principal for Gale Middle School. She is currently serving as the assistant principal at Shirley High Middle School. Ms. Fiaro joined Stafford Schools from Henrico County, where she was an education specialist for equity, diversity, and inclusion, supporting professional learning in schools and supporting strong engagement with school communities. She was also a middle school math teacher in both Henrico County and Richmond City. Ms. Fiora was the recipient of the Mary Peak Award for Excellence in Education Equity from the Virginia Department of Education in 2021. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Math Education from the University of Texas at El Paso and a Master of Educational Leadership and Supervision from Virginia Commonwealth University, where she is presently pursuing her doctoral degree. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, and just a quick correction, because I do have my husband, who I cherish. My new last name is Fiero Kin. I just want to quickly say good evening, members of the Stafford County Public Schools Board and Acting Superintendent Fulmer. I am deeply grateful for the trust and confidence you've shown in appointing me as the principal of T. Benton Gale Middle School. Since joining the division in March of 2023 as assistant principal of Shirley C. High Middle School, I have felt honored to work alongside dedicated educators and to serve our students and family. I look forward to continuing that work and fostering a vibrant, supportive environment for our Panther Pride at Gale Middle School. Thank you for this opportunity to leave and make a positive impact on our school community.
Thank you.
That's what I was thinking.
Also like to welcome Jacinda Padishnak, the assistant principal at Shirley High Middle School. She will join the administrative team at Shirley High Middle School as the school's new assistant principal. She has been a part of Team Stafford for the last 18 years, first as a teacher at Widewater Elementary School, then as an instructional technology resource teacher at Anthony Burns Elementary School and Shirley High Middle School. She served as the school improvement specialist at Stafford High School before returning to Shirley High as her innovative learning coach. In this role, she's worked with teachers to support the innovative research-based instructional practices that promote student-centered learning through purposeful technology integrations. She earned her bachelor's degree in education from Lock Haven University and her master's degree in instructional technology and design from the University of Mary Washington with a leadership endorsement from Longwood University. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair Sigmund, it's been a while. It's good to see you. Thank you to the board. Thank you to Mr. Fulmer. Thank you to all the staff out there for this wonderful opportunity as I continue my career in Stafford County Public Schools. I'd like to recognize my husband also in the crowd. I want to thank him for his support throughout my career and on to this next new adventure. And I would like to thank my team that's here supporting me. And I thank you for the opportunity to continue to serve all the Timberwolves in the coming years. So thank you.
Also would like to congratulate and welcome Ms. Belinda Rippin. Belinda will be the new Assistant Director of Professional Learning and Human Resources and Talent Development. Ms. Rippin is currently serving as Assistant Principal at Grafton Village Elementary. She joined Stafford Schools from Accomack County, where she was the Director of Elementary Education, had previously served as the Director of Elementary Education, had previously served as the Division's Coordinator of Early Childhood Education and as an elementary school principal and assistant principal. She spent 20 years as a teacher prior to becoming an administrator, including 7 years as an instructional facilitator, school improvement coach, and teacher mentor, all in Northampton County Public Schools. She graduated from Edinburgh University at Pennsylvania with her bachelor's in elementary education and received her master's in educational leadership from Old Dominion University. Congratulations.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the school board, Mr. Fulmer, thank you for trusting in me to be at a larger capacity to help Stafford County Public Schools. I have loved my time at Grafton Village. It's been a great way to get to know the community, the parents, the teachers, the fabulous staff that we have here, and I'm just looking forward to helping everyone in a larger capacity and using my knowledge and my experience to assist the teachers and staff of Stafford County, and I look forward to working with the Talent Development Department as well as the Human Resources Department here at Stafford. Once again, thank you so much.
Not to discredit that we had 3 appointments today, that concludes our appointments?
Yes.
Okay. Moving forward with our awards and recognitions.
Good evening, school board members and Mr. Fulmer. This evening, we'll recognize students and staff that epitomize our values of students, integrity, respect, community, opportunity, and excellence. Will Allie Marcus, the psychologist at Hampton Oaks Elementary and Rodney Thompson Middle School, please join us at the podium. During the week of November 11th through 15th, the National Association of School Psychologists is joined by schools across the United States in celebrating National School Psychology Week. This week honors the contributions of school psychologists and the vital role they play in helping children thrive at school, at home, and in life. This year's theme, Spark Discovery, highlights the impact school psychologists have in inspiring their communities to explore new ideas, affect change, and expand opportunities for children and youth. By fostering connected environments within schools and communities, school psychologists promote positive mental health and help remove barriers to learning, enabling students to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. Their work nurtures individual strengths and helps students achieve success both personally and academically. As we recognize the vital role school psychologists play in shaping the futures of our children, let it be known that the School Board of Stafford County designates November 11th through 15th as School Psychology Week across our division. Do we have any additional psychologists in the room? No?
Come on.
Thank you. Will Mr. Josh Schimpf please join us at the podium? For more than 3 years, Joshua Schimpf, our Energy Management and Regulatory Compliance Coordinator, has been working to bring solar to Stafford schools. Josh's passion for renewable energy, his experience as a master electrician, and his understanding of Stafford County schools came together and what can only be described as a historic project for our division as we implemented the largest school rooftop solar array in Virginia at North Stafford High School. As a 2001 graduate of North Stafford, this project carried extra significance for Josh as he worked countless hours going above and beyond to make the solar array a success. Simply put, without his hard work and leadership, this project would not have occurred. In recognition of his dedication to the project, tonight we present him with a piece of the ribbon cut during the official ceremony honoring the completion of the project. Thank you, Mr. Schimpf, for sharing your insight and talents with Stafford Schools. You are a sterling example of the best we have to offer, and we're very fortunate to have you on our team.
We'll move forward to item 6.01, the annual report and recommendation from the School Board's Technology Advisory Committee.
Mr. Fulmer, Madam Chair, school board members, it gives me great honor to recognize our Technology Advisory Committee. Thanks for all your hard work this year, and our chair, Cynthia Treichler.
Good evening, Mr. Fulmer, Madam Chair, and members of the school board. My name is Cynthia Treichler, and I'm the chairperson for our Technology Advisory Committee. I'm also a parent in the Garrisonville District. As we prepared for tonight's presentation, I was thinking back to last year when I shared that first use case I ever had for ChatGPT, using it to brainstorm ideas for my daughter's birthday, and now I find myself using it almost daily at work to analyze, to summarize, sometimes to polish up that email. So it's interesting to see just how things have evolved and the efficiency gains that we have with it. And so this evening, there we go. We're going to share some updates and insights with all of you across 3 focus areas: generative AI, cybersecurity, and the strategic enablement plan. In terms of generative AI, we'll share some updates related to our work, and then we'll really focus tonight on cybersecurity and the strategic enablement plan. These 2 have really been our focus as a committee as we've continued to explore how technology can be used to enable the goals and the objectives of our strategic plan. And this is going to include a key recommendation of fully funding the technology budget. Goal 1 of the strategic plan focuses on preparing students for our future. And I wanted to revisit this quote that we had shared last year, in that AI will not replace humans, but humans with AI will replace those without AI. And as a committee, we've been really focused on finding ways to safely bring AI into the school division. And interestingly, Gardner actually reports that by 2026, 80% of software will have embedded AI. So a lot of the software that our students and teachers interact with may have these technologies embedded, and we really need to be ready for that. And so with that, I did want to share some of our successes this year as it relates to generative AI and some use cases that we're seeing across the school division. Our first success is a 3-tiered training for teachers, and this includes a one-sheeter beginner guide for teachers that to date has had more than 500 engagements, unique engagements, across the division, a face-to-face training, and a semester-long professional development. In addition to that, the executive leadership team is currently participating in a 4-part workshop series that's being run with the Virginia Association for School Superintendents and Virginia Department of Education. And as part of that, there's an ongoing review of our existing AI policy and regulation, as well as guidance on how we can really level up and elevate how we're using generative AI in meaningful ways. Generative AI is continuing to evolve, and one of the updates this year related to Google Gemini is its data privacy for schools. Specifically, when using a school account, the data will not be reviewed, it will not be used to train the model, and it is not shared with other users or institutions. When we put forth our recommendations last year around the AI policy and regulations, we were really focused on that classroom use that's really grounded in the curriculum objectives. And this year, we had the opportunity to visit some schools. And at one of our school visits, we saw an example of how it's being used as part of a structured lesson. And in this example, students were tasked with receiving sections from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, and then they used generative AI to create a song parody of that section, and then synthesize the information to see if that plot was really represented as part of their song parody. We also saw another example of faculty use. In one of the middle schools that we visited, the school ahead of our visit prepared a survey for teachers to collect the different ways that they're using Chromebooks in their classroom. And when they presented that information to us, one of the staff members had shared, when the results came in, I tallied the different use cases by hand. I went row by row by row to see the common ways we're using it. And then another colleague had taken that same information, dropped it into generative AI, and had those same summary results in moments. And we had a good laugh as a group around the hand tallying and how quickly some of that was also summarized using generative AI. So that's our updates around generative AI. And at this point, we're going to focus or shift our focus to cybersecurity in the K-12 landscape. And I wanted to start with this quote from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and it reads, "For K-12 schools, cyber incidents are so prevalent that on average, there is more than one incident per school day." Last year, as part of our committee recommendations, we recognized the importance of cybersecurity, but at this point, no new resources have been allocated. So this continues to be a focus for us. We do have many members of our committee that work in the field of cybersecurity, and they have been surprised that this hasn't been prioritized as a budget priority. When we think about the impact of an investment like this, investing in 2 full-time employees in cybersecurity can help provide a stronger defense against breaches and really reduce that downtime when there are incidents. In addition to that, it just helps us to continue to create that safe digital learning environment to protect our student and our staff data. Shifting gears once again to our strategic enablement plan. And our #1 budget priority is fully funding student Chromebooks in order to support those dreams that we have for our students. And I wanted to break this down in a pyramid for us. Our ultimate goal for students is to prepare them for that success after graduation, whether they enlist, they enroll, or they join the workforce, And for this to happen, school accreditation is critical to graduation and this next chapter for our students. And so we really see student success fostered in our schools when we have high student engagement, early intervention, and STEAM education. And I wanted to share an example from one of our visits this year as it relates to STEAM education. Middle school students have access to gizmos, which are interactive STEM labs. And during one of our visits, we were able to assume the role of students and participate in a photosynthesis lab where we were able to hypothesize and experiment and determine the ideal conditions for photosynthesis. This was one of the potentials unlocked with technology. We were able to complete this in just a few minutes, something that really would have taken several months to implement without the technology. And so all of these tiers above really are focused on that foundation of sustainable student technology. This is the foundation upon which our goals for student learning and student outcomes can really come alive. This graph on the screen now shows us two key insights. The numbers in blue represent Chromebooks by expiration date. And in red is a sustainable plan for Chromebooks. As we can see from this graph, we are experiencing a funding cliff, and potentially by 2028, we may be in a situation that without a sustainable plan to distribute that Chromebook purchase over time, that may lead to just high school students having access to Chromebooks by 2028. So if we come back to this pyramid and this focus on those improved student outcomes as part of student Chromebooks, sustainable student technology really is that foundation for us. I'm a former teacher, a former school administrator, and I know the amount of time it takes for a teacher to really redesign and rethink assessments and daily lessons to meaningfully incorporate that technology. So I can't imagine a scenario where a teacher may need to, jump back to some past practices without that daily access to their technology. When we visited the middle schools this year, one other budget priority that actually came up with teachers at both schools was classroom presentation systems, and specifically replacing the existing systems that often include a ceiling-mounted projector with the interactive TV monitor computer system, as you see in this picture from one of our Stafford County classrooms. And so on behalf of the Technology Advisory Committee, we have 3 recommendations this evening that we feel will position our students and the school division for future success. The first recommendation is to fully fund the purchase of student Chromebooks so we can stay on track with our replacements as a school division. Our second recommendation is increasing cybersecurity resources with additional staffing and funding, specifically to full-time employees. And our third recommendation is to continue the replacement of classroom presentation systems with these more up-to-date TV touchscreen systems. So that does conclude the presentation for this evening. I welcome any questions you may have. Ms. Randall.
Remind me what the 2 positions that you would like to see added are?
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. Okay, and then how many of these touchscreen boards do we currently have and/or do we need?
I'll let Jay speak to that one for
Okay.
us.
Thank you.
We have about a third of the classrooms installed at this point. We need about, I'd say 1,400 more.
And are we talking largely at the high school level, middle school, elementary?
All
So
levels.
that a third of it is evenly balanced between the 3
Yeah.
levels at this point?
We have a whole lot of classrooms in our school division.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
And how much do they cost each when you're talking 1,400 at a price point of? We've gotten the Chromebook replacement discussion, so.
Yeah, we're rolling it into some other work we're doing, so it's about, we're paying about $800 for a TV and the mounting of that, and then we have a computer that goes on the back, and then like some of the other work in the classroom to get the cables run and all that kind of stuff. It's I'd say a good budget number is about 1,500 per classroom.
Times
With
14.
volume, it'll be less than that, though.
Okay. I have a question, and I thought this was a great presentation, and I'm learning a lot about AI on my own. I talk to ChatGPT every day because it helps me a lot. But my question is, you guys know we've got competing interests all over, right, for Stafford County Schools. If you had to, if we could only do one of the 3 things that you told us we need to do, which one should we focus on?
Do you want me to speak to that, Jay?
You're the parent.
So in terms of what we've discussed as a committee, fully funding the Chromebooks so we can have that continued replacement cycle would be the top priority.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions? Well, I've worked with the technology committee this year, which is way out of my comfort zone. They had a lot of patience with me. I learned a ton. I went to Drew Middle School with them to do the AI Midsummer Night's Dream and to do some of the other kind of student learning and the different ways they were using tech to not only teach, but to translate, which was fascinating. So the work that you do is so important to the teachers, the students, and the parents. So I'm really, really appreciative of you including me and for the work that you do, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Do we clap?
Oh, we did. Thank you.
Next item is our annual report and recommendations from the school board's Transportation Advisory Committee.
Oh, yeah. My computer's so slow tonight. I think I do. I just want to make sure it opens. See technology. I do. Thank you so much. Good evening, school board members, Madam Chairwoman, and Madam Vice Chairwoman, our student representative, and Mr. Fulmer. I'm really excited and honored to be here tonight. My name is Benjamin Diggs, and I'm the Assistant Director of Student Support for Transportation Services. With that, Mr. Johnson is unable to be here this evening, so I am a stand-in, but happy to be here. I wanted to thank the work you're going to hear from our main chair tonight, Mr. James Tully, but I wanted to thank our bus drivers, attendants, and members of the community, and our school board member who represents and is on the Transportation Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to give a moment for them to stand and be recognized for their incredible work so far. Please stand. Tonight's presentation is, I will give it over to Mr. James Tully. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, Mr. Fulmer, and the board. I'm James Tully from the Griffith Whitewater District, and I am the chairman of the Transportation Advisory Committee. We have met this school year. How do I get there? And we were asked to review the current bell schedule for efficiency, secondary traffic flows, special education busing, new school logistics for transportation, technology for effective transportation, and travel student services improvements. What we have found is the school bell discussions will not begin until the school year prior to the opening of high school 6, elementary school 18, and elementary school 19. There'll be no data to review to give a recommendation to the school board. The ad hoc TAC committee, or Transportation Advisory Committee of 2002, conducted a bell study to determine the best bell times as soon as feasible to facilitate proper implementation and planning for the start of the school year in August of 2002. The bell study should incorporate preferred amount of instruction time and number of tiers, and that's currently in progress. Secondary traffic flows, the Virginia Department of Transportation, Kyle Bates provided the Stafford Stafford Board of Supervisors an annual presentation. They came to our meeting and provided us with a similar informational meeting. We'd recommend that you invite VDOT to provide the school board with an annual presentation and have VDOT provide that presentation maybe at the joint board meetings. Special education busing and private school, day school transportation. Special education busing, currently the needs are being met. The private day school transportation is having challenges. Special education busing continues to be monitored, but private day school transportation, the Transportation Advisory Committee needs to gather more information. New school logistics for transportation, high school 6, elementary school 18 and 19 are not open until the fall of 2026. Planning for pupil transportation logistics cannot occur until attendance boundaries and school board establishes non-transported or walk zones. It is not a high priority at this time, and I guess you're discussing that today, so the Transportation Advisory Committee will continue to monitor. Technology for efficient transportation. Transportation Services has implemented and upgraded web-based computer-assisted route software suite to include field trip management software and a parent bus tracking app. Additionally, 90% of the buses have had tablets installed as of the report and will increase to 96% by the end of 2024 and 100% after the buses purchased in July 1, 2024 commission around December, January timeframe. There'll be no data to review, so we cannot give you a recommendation at this time. The Ad hoc Transportation Advisory Committee of 2022, the department to approve and implement a technology plan, so it's currently in progress. Travel student services improvements. The division implemented a transfer school bus transportation model at the start of 2024-2025 school year. The model is designed to support school system-wide open enrollment programs in large school systems. Due to the above average ride times concerns, the division reverted to the model used 2 school years ago. There will be no data to review to give a recommendation to the school board at this time. The Transportation Advisory Committee of 2023 assessed resources, and that's currently in review. And also from 2023, assessed increased transportation service burdens to create, because of special academic programs and resourcing savings that could actually be devastating transportation resources from special academic programs. So those are still currently in review. In conclusion, Transportation Services has been implementing TAC recommendations as resources permit to make improvements. Major challenges still exist. Aligning academic programs to the resources available, tempering expectations, and educating parents to the issues, and encouraging them to collaborate with Stafford County Public Schools and become part of the solution. Review previous year's recommendations and best practices to better serve Stafford County's public ridership. We reviewed the 2023 recommendations. 8 of them are in progress, 8 are in review, and 2 are no longer applicable. The 2022 recommendations, 2 have been completed, 8 are in progress, 7 are in review, and 3 are no longer applicable. Closing thoughts, parents need to be part of their child's education. This includes being part of the plan on how their children get to school. The Stafford County School Board should continue to collaborate with Stafford County Board of Supervisors in the continued growth of Stafford. We can build schools, but we also need to build the facilities to support the growth. Supporting transportation services staff through a sustainable compensation package, first-rate training, and proper recognition. Transportation Services continues to work through the 2022 and 2023 recommendations, and they are making progress. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We discovered transportation is a pretty integral part of our system here, and when it doesn't function, we hear about it. We are doing a lot with what we have. Thank you. I thought you weren't supposed to be here tonight.
Oh, the date was changed.
Ah, okay. Well, luck.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments?
So I just had 2 questions. I think it's interesting that technology and transportation went on the same day, since I have such an issue with the 2 of them being matched up together, given the issues we've had with technology this year, the app and all that other stuff. So is there any discussion around the use of the app that is currently being utilized by transportation and the impact that the inadequacies? I mean, I get it that it's an app that can be updated or whatever, but until we get that in play, I mean, we all know where I stand on the app, so that's no surprise, but I'm just curious.
Are you talking as to the lag time of where the bus is
Yeah,
actually at?
like how it's really impacting. You have this parent piece in here, which is so huge and so important, but the app is a good deal of the problem. Why parents aren't getting consistent information, or the communication is in flux a good deal of time because there's a lag time there. and we're only as good as our last shift, as we know. So I'm just curious if there was any discussion about the app, the need for revising that app. Is there any feedback from that? And then my second question would be, did VDOT ever offer to come and ride a bus for a day and see what it's like here on our roads?
Did we go for?
No, did VDOT ever offer? Because you said they came and gave us, so I'm just wondering if there's any, I was just curious if that was something that came up in conversation. I'm not
That did
being
not come up in conversation.
glib.
And as far as the lag time was discussed, but they're continuing to improve on the technology.
But I would just say, not to be argumentative, but I think some of the lag time or some of the issues, like the app is great until it's not great, and then it's very, very frustrating.
Right.
But I think that is because we have crappy cell service in Stafford County, period. So, like, my phone drops when I go to my friend's house. Well, I think the app may drop off of, like, you can't find the bus. I know my daughter's bus, coming from Widewater into Aquia, the third section, it drops off sometimes. I know the bus did not magically evaporate, and then 10 minutes later, I missed the bus because it came back on. That's not the app's fault, though. That is like whoever's doing the broadbandy stuff.
No, I totally get that, and I live in Colonial Forge, and I can't even turn into my neighborhood without, and that's Colonial, but that's not far out in the reaches of anything, and I can't keep cell service for that first, whatever amount of thing. My point is more speaking directly to the fact that, like, if our bus driver inputs something into our app or whatever, or however that works, there should be an automatic communication that goes to the parent that there was a change in that bus to some extent, and that is a large gap. So we're relying, it's very overwhelming for me to get these emails from folks saying, and I'm not, this isn't a finger pointing thing at all. I'm just saying, like, if we're looking at ways that we can improve and have efficiencies, then to me, that app should have a built-in mechanism that when I go in and say, hey, bus driver 516 has a substitute, an email should automatically go out to the parents that are tied to the original route, or however that works. And all I wondered is, was there any discussion about the need to really provide recommendations for how to enhance? Like, I don't want to take it away from everybody.
I don't think that was one of your tasks.
Yeah, we weren't tasked to look into that. So.
Maybe we can do that for next.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's that, so I think what you're asking is a valid point, Ms. Halsted, but that wasn't one of the tasks that they were given at the beginning of last year. And then the report on the efficacy of the tablets in the buses has been delayed because they haven't all been installed. So that's been part of but I think that's something transportation will look at for next year.
Ms. Halsted, if I can answer, we are definitely, it's interesting with the app itself is with any technology, apologize.
Please
With
come
any-
up so it's
when it- With
broadcast.
any piece of technology, you have to diagnose what the cause is. Is it the app itself? Is it the unit? And when I say unit, the physical bus not broadcasting? Is it that the override wasn't put in? So a lot of times we'll work with our constituents and figure out what is the main cause of the issue, but there is discussion of looking at the app and is that, how it's working, is it truly helping our community and answering that question. Along with the tablets and the cell service, that does affect. And we have a very large, county, and there is certain services that may not work in a certain area, but there's a process. Our drivers each day, log into a tablet, and if that tablet is not broadcasting that correct bus number, that is an automatic process that with the app, the parent is able to see, you're supposed to be able to see that bus, and that process should be seamless. But when technology is involved, there are times, and we've seen that, where, hey, we're learning how those overrides are working with this new piece of technology. So it's something that we are definitely looking at and exploring with that, to answer your question.
So, and I appreciate that, and Dr. Warner, to your point, at the beginning of the year when we set the expectations, we didn't know that the app was gonna have issues, so I'd also like
Yes.
to leave a little wiggle room in our advisory committees to adapt maybe you might not have a project, but I think one of the things that we need is to hear from you guys about it. And that
Yes.
was something that seemed to be a present frustration for folks. And to your
Yes.
point, I get that I'm not against the app having, needing updates, but if we're not talking about like what kind of updates the app needs, how do we make that recommendation to a software developer or the people that are working with us? So
Yes.
to that end, I'd like to see if, we need to adapt and adjust. And this was a pretty big issue, so. But
Yes.
anyway, thank you for all you do. It's not mind-numbing to me, the whole concept, but anyway.
No. Thank
Ms.
you, Ms.
Randall?
Halsted.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of information that you gave us this evening. I do have one question about one of the recommendations that you made under special education busing private day school transportation, one of the recommendations you said was private day school transportation need to gather more information. What information?
We had a new member join last month,
Okay,
and she brought that to our attention.
got it.
And we didn't, when we were discussing it, we were just discussing the special education, not private daycare.
Okay.
It was not on our radar.
Okay.
So we adjusted the report to bring that to your attention.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything? Thank you all very
Madam
much
Chair.
for your help. Our next item is the FY25 first quarter financial report and the FY24 end-of-year preliminary unaudited financial report from Mr. Fulmer.
Missy, do you know where it's at on here?
Just go to board docs? Read from there?
That's right.
Miss Swim to the rescue.
I didn't see it on, I just re-downloaded it. I didn't see it on there. All right, so this report was actually presented to the FABC last week. So thanks to Ms. Fitch who filled in for me while I was out of town during the FABC meeting. But want to give a quick update on our 2024 year end and then our first quarter for 2025. So want to emphasize this is preliminary as in every year. These numbers have not been audited yet, but we are working on finalizing those. The audit is usually completed later this month and in early December. The projected carryover, which is what we usually talk about, so kind of our savings, kind of our what you would call a net income for our operating fund was about $5.4 million after we hold $1 million to carry over to the next year. That's about 1.3% of our budget. Still a pretty low number, but it's actually a little bit higher than what we're accustomed to here. And some of that I'm going to get into, but more specifically is related to our state revenue. When we projected at the end of June, it was a lot lower, and then state sales tax came in higher, so we couldn't spend the money we didn't know that we had. So just this is a high-level summary. We actually had additional revenue we're not anticipating of 2.75, expenditure savings of 3.7, and that's a combination of some compensation and non-compensation, and that's where we get to the 5.44. So looking just at our revenue, I mentioned the sales tax. It was over $2 million higher than we originally anticipated. So that was a big swing. We get a state projection in June, and we were going off of that. And then when we got the final numbers a few months later, it was $2 million higher. So that's a good thing overall. We just couldn't spend it in FY24. That now rolls into our carryover. Also a positive on our federal side, our impact aid forms actually led to about $500,000 more last year than we had budgeted. So we had been seeing a trend of going down. We went back to the paper forms and really put another big emphasis on that, and those forms are out there now. So for our parents, please return those. Our local revenue, so kind of non-county transfer local revenue was pretty right on target. The county transfer, when we calculate the $5.4 million, assumes the full county transfer amount. On the expenditure side, our compensation and benefits yielded about a $1.7 million in savings. Not a lot when you consider our full comp and benefits budget. On our non-comp side, we did have about $2 million in savings. Our kind of the big bucket items were fuel and our fleet repair lines. And then everything else was just a combination of different departments and school sites that didn't spend their entire budget. we're talking of our total non-comp, just a few percent. It's not a lot of money. So it came to a total expenditure savings of 3.7. So going back real quick, expenditure savings plus additional revenue led to a total of the $5.44 million of carryover. Also, always like to point out our other funds, so our health benefits fund. Sometimes this is by design, and that was the case here. We knew we were going to overspend. We have additional savings in our health benefits fund, so we budget kind of aggressively, I'll say, and it kind of came in with that full expenditure amount that we thought might come, but we weren't sure. So it actually lost about $1.5 million, but it still has roughly about $4.5 million in fund balance or reserves in our health benefits fund. Workers' comp had savings, so if you recall, we switched to a fully insured instead of a fully self-insured model for workers' comp last year. So what that means is our revenues and expenditures kind of lined up, but our reserve adjustment at the end of the year, so future claims that are projected go down because the insurance company will now pick those up. So we have a big surplus in our workers' comp fund. That should be something that we'll kind of see. It'll have a positive impact on our operating fund going forward as we can adjust what we're contributing to our workers' comp fund. And then our fleet services fund was really spot on, had about $100,000 in surplus. So switching to our first quarter of 2025, right now it's really still early, so it's hard to draw a lot of conclusions, but one of the things that we always look at this early is our enrollment numbers, and then we start looking at compensation and where we're at with vacancies. So for our September 30th enrollment update, you heard a little bit from Mr. White during the work session, but we did grow by 310 students, and we budget state revenue for our ADM was $31,275, so we're still a little bit under there, which we want to be for our ADM to be lower because our total enrollment number is always higher than our ADM number. So I think we're actually pretty close to what we budgeted for our state revenue for right now, unless there's mid-year changes at the state level. Excited to share once again that our average years of experience for teachers increased. So it's a positive thing. It also brings concerns that it makes us have to keep watching our budget a little bit closer because we're not going to have as much in savings there. So this is something that for the last several years, it was dropping, and then as we've invested money into our teacher scale, especially the middle of our scale for our experienced teachers, we've seen that trend go back up the last 3 years. So really shows that the investment we're making into our teacher scale does pay off and is working. So we are continuing to replace our current teachers with more experienced teachers, or our more experienced teachers are staying at a rate higher than they were previously. Any questions on 24 or 25 first quarter?
I just want to say thank you to the teachers who are staying, because that's really, it's just a blessing. It's hard to find teachers. It's hard to have people stay when it is what it is. I don't want to be negative up here, but so to have teachers who, pulling their hair out, but you guys are staying, I just want to say thank you, because I don't know if I would. They're better than me.
Dr. Chase?
So, Mr. Fulmer, how sure are we that the state got their calc tool right this time?
Well, we have no reason to believe otherwise. Just like previously, it's really hard for us to go back in and recalculate their numbers behind the scenes. So right now, we just kind of have to assume that it's right.
Right. It was threatening to cost us quite a bit of money last year, right?
Yes.
So hopefully they got it right this time. Thanks.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'd like to recognize our student representative for her report this evening.
Thank you, and I just want to shout out Ms. Maya Guy for appreciating the teachers, because I won't name drop, but as usual, I have an anecdote, and this morning I just saw one of the worst cases of disrespect towards a teacher ever, and it just kind of upset me, which is how I'm going to transition into how I hope this survey that we have will help better the school environment. Matter of fact, actually, I finished fleshing that with Dr. Schutz and Dr. Rice, so that should be sent out some period between now and between Thanksgiving break. So hopefully I'll have that data ready to be presented to you guys for my last meeting. And I won't get too sentimental now. I know it's been a year almost, and it's just kind of crazy. I'd like to congratulate everybody on selecting our 2 new representatives. I'm not going to name drop because they will be revealed at our next meeting. So very, very interested and very happy to get to know them during our annual VSBA retreat. And I'm very excited for what the future has in store. In addition to that, actually this weekend I went to a student leadership conference hosted by VHSL, and it was really interested to get some ideas for school systems that I hope to also incorporate by talking with the new representatives about. And essentially, that is all I have for you tonight, and I'll see you guys at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will move forward with our public hearing on the high school redistricting. 3 minutes are allotted to each speaker or group. Speakers shall identify themselves by name and organizational affiliation, if there is one. Comments shall be limited to the topic of high school redistricting. Citizen comments which are profane, abusive, or which threatens imminent physical harm shall be ruled out of order by the chair. Missy?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one citizen who has signed up to speak, and that is Ms. Michelle Wickman.
Good evening, members of the board. Mr. Fulmer, it's good to see y'all again. So I actually don't have any skin in the game, so to speak, on the redistricting fight because my son's going to be a senior by the time it's enacted. But I did want to come and just say a couple of things on behalf of my little neighborhood. I'm in the townhouses of Hampton Oaks. And this isn't actually necessarily even a y'all thing, because I know you're not the ones that put together the proposed plans all the time, so it's maybe just speaking to the powers that be so everybody knows. But I would just encourage that when you're putting together those plans for the redistricting, I know it's a lot about lines, and I don't know if neighborhoods are considered, but I do feel that it's really important to keep neighborhoods together as much as possible. And particularly in the situation of my neighborhood, the townhomes are separated by several streets from the rest of Hampton Oaks. And so this is actually the second time that it's been proposed that they take just our little section of townhomes and move them to a completely different school zone than the rest of the neighborhood. So you might remember several years ago in the middle school redistricting, kind of last minute, one neighborhood put up a fight and they took just the townhomes of Hampton Oaks and sent them all the way to Shirleyheim for 3 years until Dr. Kisner and Ms. Young were able to help me get them spot moved back to Hampton Oaks. So those kids in our neighborhood were going to Hampton Oaks Elementary and then going all the way to Shirleyheim and then having to go back to North for high school. So they were completely separated from their peers twice. And the same thing almost happened with the proposed plan, I believe H, where they were going to take just the townhomes, keep them at North, but send the rest of the neighborhood to Colonial Forge. So if y'all could just pay attention when those plans are proposed. And I'm sure that it wasn't intentional, but I think even the fact that it was an oversight is almost also hurtful because it would just be really good if you could keep in mind, it's not low income per se, but it's lower income than the rest of the neighborhood. And so then equity becomes an issue if you're taking those kids and the families that aren't necessarily as aware of what's going on or paying attention to the meetings and stuff like that. So I just feel like we want to pay more attention to that. Also on the redistricting, I know, I don't know all the plans. Again, I haven't researched it, but if you're talking about balancing the free and reduced lunch, I know that's been a discussion. I would ask that you either do that or you ensure the differentiated site funding is a non-negotiable in the budget, because it's got to be one or the other. If we don't have the additional funds at our schools that have higher need, then we need to balance the need. So one way or the other, if we could just go either or, both would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing on redistricting? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We will move on to the general citizen comments. The same rules apply. 3 minutes are allotted to each speaker. Please identify your organization if you're speaking on behalf of an organization. And please refrain from being profane, abusive, or threatening any imminent physical harm. You will be ruled out of order. Ms. Hall?
Madam Chair, 2 individuals have signed up. The first will be Shamgar Connors, followed by Michelle Wickman.
Hey, everybody. My name's Shane Connors, Harwood District. First thing I want to talk about is, I know it's a Board of Supervisors issue, but I want to mention it here, is the rate of pay for teachers in Stafford. I do understand that teachers in Stafford are underpaid. I know from personal experience that I chose to get a job in Prince William County when I was teaching over Stafford schools because the pay was substantially higher, and I'm sure you guys all know that. I mean, I was a highly qualified teacher with 10 years experience when I moved over to Stafford, but I was living in Stafford working in Prince William. And I know that if schools want to incentivize more highly qualified teachers, I know I saw you said they're like a 12-year average, which is awesome, but if we want to incentivize more, we're going to have to raise the pay for teachers. And having more highly qualified teachers should lead to better outcomes and better passing test scores, you know, all that stuff. And I think it's important to do whatever we can to invest in development of our children. And so I'd like to come up with some kind of idea to substantially raise the pay rates for teachers. Usually I'm very against raising taxes, but in this case I would look at it as an investment in the future workers and leaders of Stafford. Also, I guess there's other ways to get more money from the state. I think there's a surplus in the budget from Youngkin. He can probably do something about it. And I know this is a, like I said, broad Board of Supervisors issue, but I wanted to mention it here and get interest in it. And next I wanted to talk about how the majority of Americans spoke, Trump won the election, and how that's going to affect our schools, and that task that we start implementing policy for Trump's 10-step plan for schools. He made a video, I'm sure, hopefully people saw it. So try to summarize it. Big changes are coming. He's overhauling and abolishing the Department of Education federally, and it'll be moved to the states. I mean, it's been around since 1979, and by every single metric, the education system's gone worse. I mean, you have worse passing rates, worse retention rates, that kind of stuff. They'll have federal funds follow the child. There's going to be a $10,000 tax break for people who homeschool. There's no more DEI, CRTs to SELs. Liberal agenda is going to be abolished, and when the parents aren't happy with the schools, they'll take that money and place their children in a suitable educational environment. There'll be no more political indoctrination from radical leftists with their BLM and LGBTQ flags in the classrooms. No more being taught to hate their country but to love it. And something I've been speaking out for a while, if you guys remember me talking about it, is now Trump said that if you attack, and there's immediate expulsion for any student that harms a teacher or another student, which is great. So that'll keep people safe. Trump's also going to ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the U.S. government are male and female. They're assigned at birth. And I've had many parents come to me and tell me there's people in Stafford schools, teachers, that are asking children to use neo-pronouns like ze, zer, mix, ze, zer, fey, fairs, whatever. And parents are uncomfortable with this and don't want their children to have to use compelled speech by someone in power over them. And if people want to use these neo-pronouns outside of school, cool, no one cares. But in schools, that's just not acceptable. And a lot of parents I've talked to are scared to mention this because they're worried about getting stalked and doxxed and harassed. So the main thing is we just want to have these kind of things implemented, and it's time to make education great again. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Wickman.
Hi again. So first of all, in light of the recent comments, I would actually like to speak in support of not making any changes to any of our policies unless specific mandates come down. I would hate to see us move away from being such an inclusive community that supports all of our students. So I do hope that we stick with those policies. When I was looking at the website to check the agenda and come speak about the redistricting, I noticed that y'all are voting on the calendar tonight, so I have a couple thoughts about that. I know I'm a little late to the game because you're already adopting, but if there's any wiggle room here, I did notice that the staff days, there are several of the sections where that staff workday comes at after the break instead of before. And I don't know how I know it aligns with the end of the grading period, but I don't know how it aligns with when grades are due. So I did just want to put a bug in your ear that if those staff work days are before the break, it's kind of better, at least from my former perspective, just because then you don't have it hanging over your head. You know, if you can get the grading done beforehand and then go on vacation and have it be a true vacation, kind of like not giving kids homework over their break. Also, consider the high school teachers when you're coordinating the graduations. I don't know if it's possible, given our wiggle room with the banked days, to maybe make those half days so that you don't have the high school teachers working a full day and then working graduation as well, because that is a really long day. Speaking of banked time, why are we banking so much time? I noticed that there's still 7 days, and we haven't had significant inclement weather in a couple years, so I don't know if there's any wiggle room there to take some of that banked time and instead give us the full week at Thanksgiving, which I've been asking for like 10 years. I think a lot of families would be really happy to have that. There are some local regions around us that do that full week for a fall break, and I know it would unbalance the semesters a little bit, but we've also, for the most part, done away with the 4x4s at the high school level, from my understanding, so it wouldn't be as big of an impact on the semester balance. Y'all know better than I do in that regard, but that was just my thoughts kind of looking at it. So my 2 cents, thank you for what you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Moving forward with our action items. Item 10.01, award of a contract in the amount of $387,667 to Pavion Corp. To replace the intercom and clocks at Brook Point High School, pending appropriation by the Board of Supervisors.
Motion to approve the replacement of the intercom and clocks at Brook Point.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. I'm sorry, do we not want to discuss? I can.
You have to discuss.
I want to know what happens if they don't appropriate it, the money.
The work does not get done.
Do we come here and say the Board of Supervisors did not appropriate the money for the clocks and intercom systems at Brook Point?
We will relay that to you, yes.
And then I will say it. Thank you very much.
So this came up in Fab C. The Board of Supervisors did set aside some kind of, I'll call it emergency funding in this year's budget process for health and safety specific items, so that when these really crucial things failed, there would already be some set aside. So we are getting towards the second half of our year. We are in a position to start making requests on that balance, and I believe this is the first one that we will be making.
And I did ask how often do they actually use intercoms and such in the high school, and then they indicated that they're used all the time, and they get used for things like, letting everybody know that we need to go into lockdown and stuff like that. So very important.
And this has been already sent over and has been presented to the Board of Supervisors, or not at all?
It is not. We were waiting approval by the school board first.
Okay.
So then my question is, to that point, I understand the, needing an intercom system for the lockdowns or whatever, but clocks, what are we replacing? I just don't know, is that classroom clocks that don't work anymore? Because I think people ask, why is there how does clocks fit into health and safety of students? Is that what you just said? So if we can just get that out there for the record, why those things are important, other than telling time for when class is over so they can be done.
Yes, so it's an integrated system, so we have to do both.
That's perfect.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Please cast your votes. That motion passes 7-0. Item 10.02, award of a contract in the amount of $3,008,400 to Edward Kocharian and Company, Inc. for the Replace Mechanical Systems Phase 2 project at Kate Waller Barrett Elementary School using fiscal year '25 VPSA bond funds.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Madam Chair, I see this is Phase 2 of how many phases?
Mr. Towery?
Sure, so this should complete.
This will complete it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
What are the systems again? Mechanical systems, are they?
So like the air handling units, exhaust fans, I think this one has a hot water heater, some of the.
Okay.
Would this include inline filter systems, if it's part of the HVAC, or is this separate?
Yeah, so if there's any upgrades to filtration, that would be included as part of this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion? Please cast your votes. This item passes 7-0. Item 10.03, award of a contract in the amount of $4,879,270 to Service Mechanical, Inc. for Replace Mechanical Systems Phase 2 project at Brook Point High School using FY25 VPSA bond funds.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
I also asked the same question of, this also said, I believe I saw phase
Phase
2.
two, yeah.
And of how many?
So this will wrap this one up too, but we had 2 phases to phase 1, 1A and 1B, so this is phase 2,
2
Yeah.
complete, period,
Yeah.
no 3.
That,
Thank you.
correct.
And again, is this the same type of stuff?
Yeah.
Air
Mhm.
handlers and?
Yep.
And I just want to confirm that we are upgrading our air filtration systems when we do these mechanical repairs, right?
Right, so those are getting replaced and upgraded, that's right, yeah.
Any other discussion? Please cast your votes. That item passes 7 to 0.
Motion to approve item 10.04, award a contract in the amount of $6,084,566 to Samaha Associates for architectural and engineering services for Drew Middle School replacement project, contingent upon funding from the Board of Supervisors.
Second.
Discussion.
It's not a discussion, but I do want to remind people that there is a meeting, I believe is it this Thursday? It's this Thursday at Drew Middle School for anyone that would like to listen in or participate in the design for Drew Middle School.
And I do want to add, this one does also is contingent upon appropriation by the Board of Supervisors, but this project was approved in the CIP. They just had a lot of the funding in FY '26, not in FY '25, so we're going to have to pull it up, a piece of it into this school year.
Any other discussion? Please cast your votes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 10.05, approval of the proposed 2025-2026 program of studies.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Madam Chair, I would request that we do a division between the transportation part and the program of studies part.
Is there a second to that?
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay.
I'll second it anyway, just in case.
Discussion? Or are we,
Madam Chair, could we have a discussion of the division? Because I think it needs to be clear exactly what we're going to be voting.
So I'm asking that we would first vote on how we want the transportation language to be in the program of studies, and then vote for the entire program of studies.
Okay.
And could you say what page that is so we can pull it up?
I think it's actually throughout the program of studies that we have that language
It's in about-
referencing transportation.
It's in about 5 different places.
Okay, and in the work session, there was a specific
Yeah.
a
So it's-
footnote. Is
it's-
that throughout here?
So there are 2 derivations of language that are repeated a couple of times throughout. One referring to programs, one like specific to specialty centers, but they all say the same types of things.
in the
as two
summary
listed.
document, could we look at is that the language, or is that
No.
just summary of the language?
It's a different document.
It was in
It's
your,
not in the
the
summary.
presentation.
It's not in the summary that they have attached here for the transportation part.
Right, it's page 8 of the slideshow that we were given.
In there.
So what I think the original conversation is focusing on whether or not we want any language specific or committing us to a transportation plan without actually kind of having the full breadth of what's happening across the program base, and just wanting to get more comfortable with that transportation piece by
So-
having to hold up the entire thing for that language. That was what I took out of the work session.
So just to be clear, right now, we're discussing the division, and if we opt to divide, then we discuss any language, correct?
I don't, again, I don't think you vote on a division, so we're
Okay.
I thought we were just
We're just going to discuss
talking
language.
about the division part. but-
Right. Yeah, I was trying to get clarity on exactly what we're going to be voting on.
So we're just-
Because if it's general, that's one thing, but if it's throughout here, I'm not sure how we can do that and not create more confusion.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That you consider removing language related to transportation
That's right.
within the program of studies, the proposed program of studies.
Yeah, I think we had discussed voting on the program of studies and removing any language and references to transportation until we've resolved those issues.
Okay, but anything we did in a work session does not automatically carry over here?
No,
because
but
we're not
that's what we had
taking action.
discussed, and I
So I
think,
just,
yeah.
for the record, is that acceptable to you, Dr. Chase?
Yes, that's acceptable to me.
And for the public that may not have been privy to our work session, perhaps you could, just outline the reason why we're doing this is for the public's benefit.
Yeah, so we had a number of transportation issues this fall. I think people are aware, parents are aware of that. We have an outside report coming to the board. We have hopefully a new superintendent coming on board in the not too distant future. And so we don't really know what kind of transportation we can or can't provide. And so we don't want to overpromise or obligate ourselves at this point when we don't really know what the situation is going to be.
I think we also want to point out that we have different options available as far as the transportation goes, so we are going to have to weigh those.
Okay, so do you want to entertain a amendment to the motion to just delete all the references to provision of transportation with respect to the programs? Of course, none of that applies to special education. We need to make clear because we have a legal obligation with respect to providing transportation for special ed, do we not?
Yes, yes.
So I don't want to make, I don't want to make it more complicated, but I don't want to.
Right.
You
So
know,
I
do
believe
something
if we
that we're
just
not
remove
authorized to do.
all language related to transportation, then that can be dealt with. I mean, staff can certainly let individuals with special education needs be aware of that, but yeah. Does that seem reasonable?
But we're not going to make any change to transportation that we are required to provide because of special education laws. Is that correct? Okay, I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
All right, so is that if we could restate the motion, because originally it was a division for 2 votes, and as I understand it now with the amendment to the motion, we'll simply have 1 vote. Is that?
I'm not sure where my vote will be on the rest of the program of studies, but I wanted to get this part clarified first.
Right, but is there still a division? Are we going to vote on the program with?
There is still a division, so we're essentially voting right now to remove all language regarding transportation from the program of studies.
Except for special ed.
Except for what is required by law in terms of providing transportation for special education.
Cast your votes on this. That motion passes 7-0. This brings us back to the remaining program of studies.
Motion to approve the program of study.
Second.
Discussion. Dr. Chase?
Yeah, so I have 2 concerns. One is I do have concern about middle school and math. And my concern here is mainly just that we have schools that are really struggling to acquire or keep licensed math teachers, and so I'm a little concerned about that. And then I'm a little concerned about adding an additional specialty program for next year. I don't really know where we are with the 3 programs that we have already added and what it's going to look like in terms of people, students continuing next year. So I'm just a little concerned about adding another program.
Any other discussion?
I'm also a little concerned about our numbers, and then, of course, the transportation. But I also thoroughly appreciate Mr. Bowling sharing with us that bringing on 1 or 2 is a much easier job than bringing on 3, which was, my thought was to hold out and bring on 3. But I was also a little concerned about what changes might need to be done to the building to accommodate this, and I feel that that's been answered. Developing teachers as well as, or getting the teachers for this program, I feel like you've answered that as well. I just want to proceed with caution because of course, I'm full force for these programs because I feel like for Ms. Healy calls, for lack of better words, average, but I call invisible middle. This is an opportunity for them to find something for themselves. And the business part of this is something like Ms. Halstead was talking to us about earlier, is something that is a way that we have forward in our own community to support this program of studies. So I have concerns, but of course, I don't want to overwhelm by holding out and waiting a year to bring on 3. So.
I would just,
Dr. Warner?
I would just like to say I too have concerns. I am concerned about the middle school math curriculum because we need to make sure we have the math teachers in place in order to succeed with getting those kids through Algebra 1, and I know that we are having difficulty achieving that. I am concerned about expanding the program and the number of students because it's going to have an impact on transportation, but I'm also concerned that if we don't expand it, that we will burn bridges with the business partners that we've already established for this program. I think that it sounds like for this particular specialty center, we already have much of the infrastructure in place, and we've already kind of moved some of the students around that will be there. So I am going to support the program of study. But I also would like some kind of report at some point next year to see how things have gone with the specialty centers, because I know we've made a lot of changes, especially adding, switching some things to the 2-year program because they just weren't really amenable to a 4-year program, and see where we are, just to see how students are, how families are if they support it, if it's working, if the students stay in the programs, and I just would like to see what those numbers look like.
Can I ask a question? You and Dr. Chase both mentioned math teachers for middle school, and I guess I'm missing the connection to the business program
No,
of
I just feel
studies.
like
Yeah.
we have to get the middle school prepared for these programs, and I just
Oh.
want to make sure that we've got all those blocks in place.
Okay,
That's
thank
all.
you.
It's
Okay.
just, I think they're connected tangentially.
I mean, if we have some schools without math teachers in middle school, those students at those schools don't have the same opportunities as students at schools that do have math teachers.
Any other discussion? I will say that I was concerned about transportation until we kind of talked it through in the work session, and learning that we already have a bus going, if we maintain the same transportation, model as we have right now. We already have these buses that are not full, traveling between the places where these same students would be getting on these buses to come to Forge. So that doesn't cause an increased burden, and honestly, I was disappointed to hear that delaying this specialty center would then delay North's specialty center another year, because again, opening 3 at once would be a tremendous burden. We've learned that much, at least through this process. So that would mean skipping a year, having 2 at High School 6 and at Forge in 2026, and then not having anything at North until 2027. And I think honestly that's honestly a bigger loss, because it delays access for more students to a program that, I know that they've been anticipating and working on. So that's a concern for me. If it meant not delaying that third program, or that sixth program, as it were, I might feel differently, but that's a lot. That's tough. That's tough.
So, go ahead. So, I mean, I'm gonna support it because of several reasons, but I think the whole transportation issue is, that onus is on us, 100%. We are aware that there is an ongoing concern about how to get our kids from point A to point B. That's why we've been trying to work through the vendor and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of discussions that have to happen. And for me, looking at the program of study, the specialty center, and looking at what Colonial Forge already does, the things that are in place. But the bigger piece for me is the community that's around cyber is so big and so strong around here that I think if we drop the ball on that one, then definitely shame on us. I'm looking, at you, Mr. Bowling, but I believe that the legwork has been done there. And I really believe that I said this with the specialty centers last year, I think our kids deserve a lot more than potentially what we've been allowed to do, as it were, financially in the past. And I think at this point in time, the conversation is about how do we improve our systems to make sure that these kids get access to all of the things that they deserve, and that specialty center is one of them. And the careers coming from cyber are just massive. We had technology coming here today, AI, all of this stuff. I don't even like technology, but I see that it's the future. And I don't think that we should delay our kids from having access to careers and the opportunity to get certifications, particularly our older kids. And one thing that Mr. Green said a long time ago when we went on that visit really stuck with me, I think, for this whole discussion, which is it's really hard to get interns nowadays that are sort of fortified with education at the school level in the cyber world, which is interesting. But he really believed, unless I took it wrong or I'm remembering it wrong, that these specialty centers give those kids a little bit of that confidence that they need to walk into even the internships with, a little bit stronger. And I'm not going to take that opportunity away from anybody, because we can't get our act together on transportation in this county with making our resources match our capacity. I think it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
So I have heartburn because I don't want to vote on this right now because of transportation and the unknowns. But I also understand that we have to vote tonight, so that's why I didn't even bring that up. But that's why I don't want to approve, I don't want to vote yes on this because I feel super uncomfortable. But when I count what everyone's saying, I know it's going to go through, which it should. So, but I don't want to add anything to our plate until I know that we can manage the plate. And because it is, what month are we in again? November. It's November. And we started school in August and we still don't have our report from transportation. And so I'm still kind of like, that weighs into my vote, right? And I can't vote not having all of the information. Of course, we should all approve this, because I don't want to block anyone's access. And I think that the specialty center opening up at Forge is ready. I know they're ready because I've talked to the educators. They're so excited. But just explaining why my vote's going to be what my vote's going to be.
Anyone else? Okay, please cast your votes. That motion carries 5-2 with Dr. Chase and Ms. Guy dissenting. Oops. Item 10.06, adoption of proposed changes to the 2025-2026 school calendar.
Motion to approve.
Oh, yeah. So I
You have to second.
oh, second. Oh, sorry. Everybody usually yells it by then.
Second.
The one time I had
Discussion,
my opinion out.
Ms. Halsted?
I have a question. Okay.
You go first.
Can you clarify for us how many instructional days or hours will be in the first semester versus the second? If that's not readily available, that's fine.
We're 25, 26, it's 83 and 90.
25, 26, it's 83 and 90?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Dr. Stemple, does that mean that if we heard a comment suggesting that we move the work days from after January to before, the end of December, that that would, could we do that? Could we make them 22 and 23 work days, and then school would start back up without those work days? Like, would start back on the 5th?
You could make your workday the last day of the semester and your staff professional day. I can tell you that we have taken this to the teacher advisory committee on 2 occasions, and no one in that committee has ever said, please move the dates prior to any break. So this is the first time we've heard it in any of our, we took this.
And I do know that in general, we definitely want for the students to have 2 full weeks off, which this does. But if we were to make the 22nd and 23rd work days, then our staff would not have 2 full uninterrupted weeks, right? It would.
Correct.
Okay, so just.
Dr. Stemple, if the end of the first semester is on December 19th, when are grades submitted, when
They're still
do
going to be
report
due that.
cards
They're
come
still going to be
home
due
and-
after break. It'd be a week after that. They wouldn't be available till the 12th.
So they'd be due January 12th.
No, the grades would do when they come back to the 5th, because then we have to review the grades.
So I'm just trying to think of, regarding our prior comments, essentially coming back and giving them the work days still gives them those 2, essentially. It doesn't?
I'm sorry, are they due at the close of business on the 5th or the start of the day?
So typically they're due once, there's an upload, and there's a grade check process the following day, and then they're uploaded, and it's about a 4-day, 5 days before they're finalized.
Right, we're just asking when teachers have to actually.
When will they be working on these grades?
Grades.
Given this schedule, when will teachers be?
The 5th.
They'll be doing the work on the 5th?
On the staff workday,
Okay.
January 5th.
If they choose to get it done on the 22nd, or let's say they choose to get it done on the 20th and load it up, would they have to come to work on the 5th?
I'm not the superintendent, so I'm not going to answer that question. I didn't apply for that job, so.
All right, thanks, Dr. Stemple.
Don't put me on that spot now.
Any other discussion on this?
So I have issue with,
Can I just make clarification? This calendar has already been approved. You've already approved it. We're only bringing to you two things for you to consider tonight. Number one is to add a professional development day in the first semester so that you don't run into the same scenario next year in the fall that we did this year. And that date was added November the 3rd. So it'll be for BLA training, ongoing training, and training for our new staff that would come in on
You said it's November?
October 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
And then second thing for consideration is the addition of the Diwali holiday that has been requested of members of our Hindu and Indian communities. Those are the only 2 changes. If you do nothing, you already have an approved 05-06 calendar. We're only asking you for these 2 considerations in this particular.
so I'm just gonna say that I'm not gonna support the addition of the days. I have very strong feelings about the number of days that our parents who don't have access to childcare and need to work, and we have given a lot of concessions and accommodations to things, and this is 2 extra days then, it sounds to me. We have, no school, or whatever. That's a lot of days for some parents to have to take off from work, and I get that people are gonna feel differently about it, but for me, it's not okay.
Could I ask a question? Could we remove one of the days related to the Easter holiday in order to give people who celebrate the Diwali holiday. I mean, we have for Easter the Friday and the Monday and the entire week of spring break.
I'm gonna say no to that myself as well. Good Friday is a very holy holiday for our Christian families, and I'm not sure that they would accept or take kindly to that as well. So I don't think it's a fair suggestion to make, to trade off one for the other. My concern is more related to the fact that we have parents who can't afford to take this many days off from work, or can't afford to get childcare for their kids on these particular days. So I might be in the minority here, and that's fine with me, but that's how I feel about the calendar.
I think that's fair what you're saying, but Diwali is really important just to our families as well, right? So you don't want to trade one for the other, but if you honor one, can't you honor the other as well?
So are you, I mean, you're not wrong, but at the end of the day, we could do this all day long with all of the cultures that Stafford County supports. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then it still impacts our families who don't have access to care for their kids on those days. And this is 2 extra days now that they'll have to figure out how to get someone to either watch their kids or do whatever. So I'm not against many things at all. I'm pretty amenable to most things, but an extra 2 days in one calendar month seems a bit excessive to me, and I just can't support it.
So what about if we added Easter Monday, and since it's not really a holiday? So this April 6th, remove it as a day off.
Well, I think that we run into the issue of, and I feel like I remember this from Dr. Taylor, is once we have to take and give and take from the same semester, it doesn't really math the same. If they were both in the spring semester, we would be able to do that, but this is always our issue is that fall is always very heavy with both federally required holidays and then our, election days, and then the other things that we need to get done as far as teacher work days and things like that, to be able to balance it so that we can have the 2 weeks right around Christmas that basically the entire community wants, both on the employer side and on the student and family side. Ms. Healy?
Ms. Halstead, would it help if we moved the professional learning day to another month other than
That's what I was
October?
gonna ask. Why can't we do it a different month?
I mean, there's no magic about October 2nd, is there, Dr. Stembel?
No, we looked at September 22nd as well. We tried to make it one of those days that was stuck out there. If you look at September 22nd, we looked at the possibility of that date, which is a Monday, when there's a 1 day off.
Oh.
That is an increased
What about the days in
likelihood of
November?
call-outs of drivers and teachers and.
Yeah, maybe that could be a win-win.
What about the days in November, like the 3rd or the 10th, because we have off on the 4th and the 11th?
What if we stayed off the first semester and just went and did it in the second semester, like January 20th?
Well, the VLA training was important to our new teachers, so we're trying to
New
put it in
teachers.
first semester
I see.
for them.
I see.
That
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Let him
And
answer.
earlier in the first semester, that's why we stayed away from the days in November.
What if we started school day later?
Like did transition day on the 12th, start first day of school 13th, and do that training on the 11th?
Would that help?
I mean, I guess it would help, but my point is the number of days that were, that parents, I guess my concern is that this is still an additional 2 days off that parents now have to account and allot for throughout the course of it. So if I'm the only one that feels this way about it, that's fine. I mean, it's just, this was something that came up, has come up over and over as an issue, and I see this all the time, and a couple of people that I've spoken to have said, why, now I gotta find care for my kids, I have to pay for that care for my kids, or I have to take the day off from work, and then I lose the day's wages. And I get that parents plan for those things throughout the course of summer and whatnot, because they're intentional in those thoughts and regards, but some parents are saving up the whole time to be able to pay for those summer programs for their kids, or whatever it is, so that they can work. So, again, I'm okay if I'm the only one here who feels this way, but it's something that I feel very strongly about.
But still, could we consider, Dr. Stempel, instead of October 3rd, like you said, getting that VLA early training doing it that August 11th and shifting the start to 12 and 13?
Sure could.
I just feel like it's,
But we
we're
have the-
already in training mode, it kind of,
But they have the second off for Yom Kippur.
Right.
So you're just having everybody come back, like,
they're already back.
they wouldn't be back because there would be no school on the 3rd. So what we're doing is you won't have school on the Thursday, but then you will come back to school on the Friday if we move that 3rd to August, right? If we're
Yeah.
giving them.
Correct.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No,
Okay, so if you look at October
yeah,
and you see the 2nd, which is
Yeah.
pink, that's a day off for a religious holiday.
yes,
And then they've put a professional learning day on the
Correct.
Friday.
correct.
If we get rid of that professional learning day,
Mhm.
I don't know, a lot of parents might prefer a 4-day weekend than to have to come back for one day, which is a Friday.
But we still have the, like, those floating days in November, when we have
know.
November 3rd, and then
Yep.
that Tuesday off, November 10th, and that Tuesday off. So I think, and even in September, when they have the 23rd off, but they come back on the 22nd, take a day off, and then come back. That's why I was like, if it's teacher training, then, they've done all their introductions to their kids in school, they can get their VLA, transition day, and then we start school. I'm just trying to,
Yeah. So
Is
maybe
there
we
a-
should just vote on this calendar, and then if it doesn't pass, then we can come back and decide what people want to do. I mean,
Or we could defer this until we could see if there could be some, compromise or consensus, because I agree, I think you're making a good point, Ms. Hall said that's a lot of days off in October. For the parents to, have the kids, and not to be in school as well. So I would prefer to have, a look at this to see if there is another day we can move the professional development to.
Just identified those days, let's just make a
Right.
decision,
Well,
right?
we've identified, a half dozen days. I mean, do we really want to sit here now and go through each one and somebody keep a tally, or, okay?
I'll keep a tally, let's just get it done, it shouldn't take us no more than 10 more minutes, like we've identified 3 other days, pick one of the 3 days and let's get a consensus. Does that day work, does that day work, does that day work?
Was there any reason that we didn't automatically tack it on to like the August days? Was there a reason that was considered and then not adopted in favor of October 3rd? Because I feel like that is,
I feel like the teachers are doing an awful lot to get ready for school. I'm not sure I want to tack VLA training on the front end.
We looked at the 2 days, October 3rd and September 22nd is that's the two that, and by we, it's pretty much Chris and I, so.
I mean, there is one of the things that we've heard, I would say from some staff is actually having maybe a partial week. So if you push the transition day to the 12th, so you push it a day, so then it's a 4-day week for those, the kindergarten, 6th and 9th grade. And then your first day of official school starts on the Wednesday.
and that's the first year we did transition day, that's what we did.
Well, not to jump
Can I-
ahead,
Missed transition day this year because we didn't have transportation.
another conversation.
we, not to look ahead, but we did move it a day in the following calendar at the request of the elementary principals especially.
can we just call the question?
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve this calendar as is. Please cast your votes. Motion passes 5-2 with Ms. Halsted and Ms. Healy dissenting. Hold on to your hats, we're going to do this again. Adoption of proposed 2026, 2027 school calendar. Dr. Stemple, will you point out the days that we are, because I assume it's for the same reason, to add days?
You have not approved this calendar
Okay.
yet, so this is
This is
your
brand new.
second look. You had this in last week. It's been in your update. This is your look at this is your vote on the 26-27 calendar at the direction of many Each day has been outlined as either a staff workday or a professional day. There are no combination days, so it's fairly clear. You also will see that at the request of the elementary schools, we did push the week, the transition day to Tuesday and the first day of school to a Wednesday. We did include in this the first semester workday again, first semester professional learning day again. You will see that. There is no Diwali, that happens to be on a Sunday. There happens to be in May on the 17th, you will see the second Eid does show up in our calendar for the first time in May on the 17th. Pretty much the calendar follows previous calendars, which leaves us with about 7, yes.
The red numbers?
Just, it's the count. How many days each month, and then the total counts at the end.
That's what I thought. It's just you didn't have it on the other one, so I was just trying.
Well, this is a new one. That one you've already approved, so that's why it was taken off. This is for your first, for your look, I'm sorry.
How many banked days are there in this calendar?
We have banked hours, and there are
Hours.
48.
Which makes about how many days?
48 times 8 bank days.
I don't,
And for your information, last year we used 34 hours. 28 due to inclement weather, 6 due to the presidential primary. 4 of the 28 were due to rain.
So we're starting on a Tuesday in August.
Yeah, this was,
I thought there was a reason why we, in the last discussion, that was not practicable.
I didn't say that, I
No,
said.
no, not you, but I thought that was
no,
a,
they were saying to add that extra training, when
right.
you're getting everything ready for the year would be a lot. That's what they were saying. It wasn't that it was expensive.
Well,
You'll-
the
you'll
irony
notice-
is that when we add that training, we are actually giving a benefit to the staff, because right now, it's not designated, correct, Mr.
It
Fulmer?
is, it's
Didn't
the
they ask that we give them a day
the
for that?
10th of August
So
on
we're
your
taking
calendar.
away an instructional day to add that professional development day, which I don't have a problem with, but that is an add at the request of the staff, if I remember correctly. Is that,
The 10th of August is actually a staff workday. The request was to have a workday on a Monday to start the week, and the elementary principals asked for a short week, and that's the reason this calendar differs from the previous year.
And that's how it was originally done in the first year that we had transition day.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any
So
questions?
is staff done in May of 2027 on the 27th?
Yes,
They're done? Okay.
yes.
So they don't have to go, okay.
Well, except there will be some graduations on Thursday night,
Right,
but that would be their last day.
okay, before the weekend. All right, thank
Memorial Day the 31st that year?
Yes, it is
In
the latest that
2027?
possible can be in this calendar, yes.
Okay, and tell me again, the 19th, so we've got, in October of 2026, we've got Professional Learning Day on the 12th, no school staff work day on the 16th, and then 19 again, no
Parent.
school for the kids, parent-teacher conferences, that's
Right.
different?
It is different because we have, the 12th is the Columbus Day, Indigenous People Day, which is early. And so that's our professional day, and then we end at 9 weeks and have our grading period, our teacher work day, different than the professional learning day, and then we have our parent-teacher conference day.
Because that's traditionally, isn't that traditionally parent-teacher conference day then? Columbus Day, or, yeah, Indigenous People Day that
Yes.
day?
Mhm.
Okay.
Does Rosh Hashanah fall on a weekend this year? That's one that's not, I don't see unless I'm missing it.
If it's not on here, it does, yeah. I don't have it off the top of my head. I want to say it's,
I see Yom Kippur is in September instead of October, early October on this calendar. I don't see Rosh
I
Hashanah,
think
which means it's
I'm gonna tell
likely
you
on a
about
weekend.
October. It's
So
on a
Madam
weekend.
Chair, I don't think we have made a motion, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we approve the calendar.
Second.
No, go ahead. Well, I have a
Okay.
question. Can we entertain, or if the answer is no, I respect it, but for the 26th or the 27th of having those half-days for the teachers, or would that go crazy? That'll blow everything up, right? Transportation. Okay, well, we tried. I heard and I responded, and it's no. Okay, it's fine.
It's not only transportation, it's instructional, because a lot of times transportation, kids don't get transported in the middle of the day, from my experience, so it's a very difficult challenge for our.
Madam Chair, can we call the question, please?
All right. Please cast your votes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Superintendent report.
All right, thank you. It has been an impactful month for the Stafford schools and our community. In early October, we hosted our third annual Chart Your Future event for our high school seniors. Furthering our goal to ensure every student is prepared for life after high school, we had over 120 vendors attend this event, designed to provide students with connections to military options, post-secondary institutions, and career-ready opportunities. We also hosted our annual legislative summit. I'm pleased that this event is supported and attended by so many of our legislators. The interest in our priorities is high, and I expect we will see continued positive outcomes from this event. As a reminder, all of the initiatives proposed at last year's summit were picked up by our legislators, though they all did not come to fruition. We are grateful for the state support. It was a cool night, although not as cool as some of our previous years, at our Band Together to Fight Hunger event. This has always been a really fun night for our high school bands and our community. Each of our 5 high schools performed their halftime show, then banded together as one to play America the Beautiful, led by North Stafford High School's Assistant Principal Brandon Neal. We anticipate, though we have not yet received the final numbers, that this event will provide 55,000 meals for our community families. This weekend, I encourage you to celebrate our diverse community and attend the 3rd annual Multicultural Fair. This event will be held at Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Stafford High School. Nearly 30 countries and cultures will be presented by our students and staff. This is always a great event that showcases the heritage and culture of our learning community. So I hope to see you there. And lastly, I have good news regarding our Operation Warm program. Coats have been delivered, and schools should have them for distribution by the end of next week. So for our families, please contact your child's counselor for more information. And I want to thank everyone who donated to this year's initiative. This year we'll provide 1,250 coats to students in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Board member comments. I'll start with Ms. Randall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also attended Chart Your Future, and I appreciate the work of all of those people, including Dr. Rice and Nikki Jackson, to get that event. My husband was actually a presenter there because we employ 12 former Stafford County students in the business, and actually 3 of them were there. So again, it's such an awesome experience, and I've been to all 3 years, and to see how much it grows and the interest of the kids and the competition for the schools and for the employers, as well as the military and our local fire and rescue and police officers. They really go above and beyond to encourage these kids and spark a little excitement or an idea in their head that they may not have considered. And there was even a plane in the building, which was kind of cool. In ATI business, I just want to throw out there, we had our final meeting of the year, voted on the cell phone policy, and we will begin meeting again in January to work on our budget there. I went to Stafford High School. Navy Rear Admiral Mattingly visited the ROTC at Brook Point, and then he came to Stafford. So I met him at Stafford and listened to him talk about his career with the young men and women that were in the audience, and he did such a good job just engaging them to talk when it was clearly a room that was a little bit they were a little shy. But he brought it out of them and had a really nice conversation, and they asked really good questions. So that was very fun to meet him and to be a part of that. Of course, we attended Band Together, was so excited to see that they raised money for over 40,000 meals just for our local families. I'm sure they'll do their little presentation for us here soon, once they get everything totaled up. But it was still a very nice night and great attendance for the board members that were present, and also thank you, Dr. Young and Mr. Diggs, for being there as well. I got to, a few years ago, when we did have school on Veterans Day, one of the moms, who's a friend of mine at Ferry Farm, was very annoyed because she thought we should have Veterans Day off. So she started having a huge breakfast, much like we did the senior walks, started a huge breakfast and a march, which has been carried on into other schools now as well. So I got to attend, and actually I served breakfast because they were shorthanded, and so Mr. Diggs came there as well to honor our vets that were in the building, and seeing them march around the building and the pride that the children had when they're walking around their older sibling, their parent, a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, whatever or even a teacher, was just really, just so heartwarming to be a part of. I also want to thank Mr. Diggs, Mr. English, and Ms. Halstead. We kind of got together and had our own little meeting to make sure that we start off our conversations, especially with them having a new county administrator, and all fingers crossed we have a new superintendent for our budget season. It was just nice to have a preliminary sit down, let's make sure we stay on the same page and answer each other's questions. So again, I just appreciate the cooperative effort that we were able to establish with our members, and I know some of you are going to be doing the same and have talked about that too. So that's all. Thank you.
Ms. Healy?
I'm going to keep this brief because we still have a lot more to go. After we finish our agendas, here we have our closed session. I want to thank all the students and instructors, directors, teachers, and especially the band parents who support our community, because every time I go to Band Together, which I think you all know is one of my very favorite events of the year, I just am in awe of the parents and what they do to support the band community. It's remarkable because there is so much time, money, and effort that has to go in there to support our students, and they never disappoint. It's just incredible. I just wish we could have more of our community be able to participate, in it. And I was talking some, with some of the staff there, because I do think that a lot of our community, with and without students in school, would be very impressed with what our students, put forth there, especially the finale. It's remarkable. And I'm sure they'll have a report, and that the money that you mentioned was, the most that I can ever recall it having been donated. Every year there's more and more community organizations and just community members who are contributing to that, as well as all the food that is brought in and loaded into the truck that they have there. So thank you very much to Mountain View for being the host there. I think I saw it was the 14th year that we're having it, something around that. And I remember the first, back when Mr. Armstrong was here. So it's been a great 14 years, and I hope we can continue it for a long time in the future.
Ms. Halstead?
Okay, so I actually don't have that much either tonight. Just a happy 249th birthday to the United States Marine Corps, Semper Fi. On behalf of all of the military folks out there. I just want to thank all of our veterans for their hard work and dedication to our country, their continued support of her mission of freedom every day. I think we shouldn't let a Veterans Day go by without acknowledging the sacrifices of those men and women. I too went to the Admiral's visit, but went to Brook Point. My nephew is in the JROTC there, go Connor. And I found his message just to be completely uplifting, and his investment in the kids amazing. I think one of my takeaways that he really left the kids with is sometimes it's who you know, and now you know me. And I was very impressed with the fact that he gave them his card and really gave them some direction. And I think confidence to reach out to someone who's a leader in the Navy and who has a distinguished career there. And I was just really impressed with him and his speech. And of course the kids and listening to them talk, their individuality and their spirit and how different they are and the things that they're interested in it. And then yet they have this one common piece with the ROTC, and I just thought that was amazing. So I'm happy that I was able to go to that. And I just want to remind everyone that the next few months are filled with a bunch of strife and crazy things that we have to decide. We not only have high school redistricting, we have budget, and then we have elementary school redistricting. So to the extent that we can all kind of stay together on the issues and understanding, I don't actually like the way the processes work sometimes because we tend to give so much information, it gets confusing. So bear with us and, email us as the confusion comes. I can guarantee you on some level we're confused with you, but hopefully if we all work together, we can get the answers to our questions. It's not an easy process, it's a long one, and it's one that is filled with a bunch of information that can get daunting if you let it. So that's all I really have to say. I think this is the last time we'll see everybody, so safe holidays, happy Thanksgiving.
Dr. Chase? Yeah, I also don't have a huge amount. I did want to say a little something about the use of artificial intelligence in teaching. Many years ago, I expressed some caution with respect to bring your own device to schools. And here we are, many years later, deciding maybe we don't want students to bring their own device. I think AI is a phenomenal tool, but I'm finding with my students that they don't actually read, and they just type it into ChatGPT, and then they hand something into me, and I look at it and I say, you didn't read what you were supposed to have read. You just typed the title into ChatGPT. So, and I'm not really interested in making students better at using ChatGPT. I'm interested in students learning how to think for themselves. And so I think we need to be really cautious about how we unroll this and what kind of safety net we have and things like that. I mean, it's getting to where we better make sure our high school students know how to take an in-class test, because that may be all they have when they get to high school. Because if teachers can't trust that students are doing their own work, then they're going to make them do it in a seat in a classroom. So we need to really think about how we're going to unroll this. So I'm thrilled that our technology committee is looking into that, and I know we have phenomenal staff who are looking into that with our teachers. Forgive me, do you have any board reports this month? Okay. Dr. Warner?
I do have a board report for the FABC meeting. First of all, I would like to, I don't have very many comments for tonight either, but I would like to thank our veterans and recognize the sacrifice that they made, but I also would like to thank the families, because I know that it impacts them a great deal, the deployments and the stress. So I would like to thank those families. So the FABC met. I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for putting aside some 3R repair funds, because we are starting to make a list of expenditures and invest in some repairs. One of the things I was asking Mr. Towery was about the air filtration systems, because we have been using these small air purifiers, which actually cost us about $500,000 to maintain and replace the filters. So our goal is to maybe start phasing those out in favor of a better technology as we upgrade these HVAC systems. One of the other things we discussed is the cost of transportation for day school students, which I think transportation will be looking at. They've got several things now that I think to be tasked with for next year that we will discuss at the retreat. The committee reviewed the compensation study completed by the county government. It's interesting to note that they have some pretty hefty sign-on bonuses for some areas, and they have even a bonus for bilingual employees. So those are things that definitely would translate to the school system. But we are more concerned about things like math teachers and special ed teachers, and we also discussed ways that we could help. We have several schools in the area where the location is so close to Prince William that it makes one more exit. It makes it easy for those teachers to just keep going. And we have several hard-to-staff schools that we're looking at some ways, so we've tasked our school chiefs to come back to us with some maybe additional resources those schools could get to help keep the staff that we have and to help encourage people to work there. One of the things that we looked at too is we discovered that we were able to actually take the service scale last year and bump it a little bit more than the first phase. So we may be able to go even more this year and get maybe to phase 3, which would be very nice. I think, let's see. We have 7 schools that have been targeted as targeted support and improvement schools. Those schools will be are eligible to apply for a 1-year grant of up to $50,000, but the turnaround time on that is pretty quick. The applications were sent out on the 24th of October and have to be returned by the 25th. So we're looking forward to seeing what those schools come up with to try to help improve resources and to help student achievement. We discussed allocations for project savings with Mr. Towery, so hopefully we will also be adding Rock Hill Elementary School interior finishes, and we are hoping that we can add the Brook Point fire alarm system. Since we're going to be working on the intercom, perhaps we can double up on those practices and save some time and energy in those renovations. So that's it for me.
Ms. Guy?
Sorry. I will make this quick as well because we still have another meeting to go into, and also I have a headache, so I don't think so well, publicly speaking. But I do want to thank the vets. I had a great Veterans Day. My grandmother was in my spirit and in my heart all day long, and she was so proud to be a member of the armed services. And so like I said, I want to thank the vets and their families because it's not easy being a military spouse. I also want to remind the public that redistricting is really hard, which I know you guys know. But we don't mean to piss you off. Like, we don't mean to make it harder, even though sometimes it seems like we are making it messier or whatever. I promise we didn't wake up in the morning and then to say, like, we want to do that. But we do it, though. But we don't want to. And if you get confused because, we have to notice people, hey, your community may be moving, and then I guess we notice them, hey, now you're not going to move, and then you're back on the chopping block, so to speak. It's super confusing, and I would just encourage the community to contact your representative up here and ask them the question, because it just might come through a little clearer if we're explaining it to you as far as what we know. But just to watch, be patient, and then just ask respectful questions. I know I'll answer any of them, and I'm sure everyone up here agrees that we'll be more than happy to answer the questions. And if you send in a kind email or a nice text or whatever, and you say, hey, consider my community, just because we don't agree or put that in a plan, it doesn't mean it fell on deaf ears. It doesn't mean that, it's just potentially we have more information than you might have, and there's a reason why we couldn't even, consider that. Or maybe we did consider it behind closed doors. And so I just want to remind people, it's a lot that goes into redistricting. This is my first one as like a major redistricting, but I've lived here since '07, and I've been at every redistricting town hall that we had before I got on the board, and either I was there to learn and listen, or I spoke, and it's a lot more intensive than I even expected. So just bear with us and pray for us.
Thank you. I'll try to go quickly as well. I do want to thank everybody. The Budget Committee had the opportunity to have a joint meeting with the CIP Advisory Committee as well as the Budget Advisory Committee, the Citizens Advisory Committee. I thought that conversation went really, really well, and I'm excited for moving forward. I was actually really excited to have the student representatives available to participate. We have some student representatives on those committees who have been working giving the student perspective on budget and our capital needs. And I always find that their voice really brings something to the table, so I appreciate their participation. I was also able to participate in Substitute 360 professional development. I think that was a great addition to our professional development portfolio to have a professional development day dedicated to the type of learning our substitute teachers need, because their approach and first of all, they're crucial to the functioning of our schools, but to give them kind of their own day to focus on the differing needs that their skill set brings to the table. I also enjoyed Chart Your Future. I got to attend with my daughter, who's a high school student, as well as Band Together. I attended with our middle school son, who is in the early stages of learning the trombone. So, yay. That was fun. And All County Choir. I guess all of this will come back to, please remember, especially if you're a senior citizen in our community, we have the golden ticket. You can request that through our school offices, and that will allow members of our community who are senior citizens to attend sporting events or any of these other activities we have exhibiting our student talent. Our kids do some amazing things. From theater to sports to chorus and band. I mean, you should not be bored in Stafford County. Their kids are always doing. The Golden Ticket is a ticket that will allow our seniors to enter for free. So please reach out to us and we will get you what you need so you can start enjoying our student endeavors. I thought the Legislative Summit this year was fantastic. I want to thank Senator McPike for coming, Delegate Mildy for coming, and then the offices of Senator Durant, Delegate Cole, and Congresswoman Spanberger for sending staff to participate in the conversation. Honestly thought it was much more conversational than presentation format, and I really appreciate that because I think that's where we can understand each other's challenges and needs better on both sides of the table, whether it's us as a school board or them as legislators and other boards, so that we can kind of overcome some of those obstacles or at least talk through them and understand the challenges we each face and be better prepared to solve those issues. I got to attend the mock elections at H.H. Poole. They had a great setup in their library where the students in the individual civics classes had posters where they had to develop their own political party and come up with a platform and a presentation poster. So within the classes they presented, and they got to vote on each other's within the class and then within the grade. The library, they set up the ballot boxes. They had to check their IDs when they came in. They filled out a ballot, they put it in the box, and then thank you to the registrar's office for donating some of our very special Stafford County I Voted stickers that were designed by one of our students. So the students left that day with an I Voted sticker. So it's just been a really busy month, and I'm really excited for what's coming because we are working on a lot of cool stuff. Ms. Guy, could you read us back into closed session? Okay. Yeah, while we're doing that, we'll do the announcements. Our next meeting is our school board annual retreat, November 22nd, 2024, from 8 to 4 in Williamsburg, Virginia. And then our December board meetings are December 10th with a work session at 5 p.m. and a monthly business meeting at 7.
have to read the whole thing, even the stuff that we are, so.
Take that part out.
Okay. I move that the board convene a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 to discuss and/or consider salary and other contract terms for prospective candidates for employment as division superintendent. Okay.
We took our clickers. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, we're ready? Yep. Pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the closed session held by the school board during its work session on November 12, 2024 be certified by adopting the following resolution. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of Stafford County, Virginia hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
Second. Yep.
Dr. Chase?
Agree.
Ms. Guy?
Agree.
Ms. Halsted?
Agree.
Ms. Healy? Ms. Randall?
Agree.
Ms. Sigmund?
Agree.
And Dr. Warner?
Good.
Madam Chair, motion passes.